across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Europe in meltdown as Italy closed their border to Spain following the wild invasion of 60,000 Moroccans onto a Spanish island in the last 48 hours. Is this the beginning of the end of free movement? And is this the beginning of the end of the EU? So what happened to this once great continent of Europe, a continent that dominated the world? Why has it abandoned its riches, its culture, its civilization with open borders? What is going on? We know he doesn't get everything right, but it was 3 years ago that Donald Trump said if you don't control immigration, you're not going to have a Europe anymore. Was he right? And what are the implications for the United Kingdom, for you and I? Do Europe's open borders pose a threat to the British way of life? And does this crisis finally demonstrate the opportunity presented by Brexit? Are we lucky to be out? Meanwhile, you won't believe this. Even Ted was quite shocked. A Labour cabinet minister in a row over lying on their CV. It's very unusual. It's never happened before. This time it's Big Ange. Well, we know about Rachel Reeves. Remember Rachel Reeves? She had a good CV. She was the governor of the Bank of England from 1960 to 1998. She also was one of the main generals in the Battle of Hastings and wrote Hey Jude. That was our Rachel Reeves. But Big Ange stands accused of manipulating her CV. Does it matter? And Manchester has a brand new mayor. But here's the big worry. This is the wake-up moment. Because our new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, is devolving power, which sounds lovely, doesn't it? We'll devolve power. Sounds very democratic. Well, here's the problem with that. 25% of the population of Greater Manchester voted for their new mayor. The turnout, folks, was 25%. So what that means is that 3 out of 4 voters in Greater Manchester stayed away. They didn't vote, they didn't care. So Andy Burnham is going to devolve power to the regions based upon a turnout of 25% of the vote. Doesn't sound very democratic to me. Of course, that is why, I hate to tell you folks, but I'm quite old. And I remember the 80s, and the reason why Margaret Thatcher centralised power is because local authorities were corrupt, incompetent, and unelected, because the turnout was so low in the 80s. They didn't really have a democratic mandate. Well, the new mayor of Greater Manchester has been elected on 25% of the votes. And Burnham thinks it's a good idea to pump power into the regions. Do me a favour. What this country doesn't need is more politicians. But my question to you this morning is a simple one. As we process those outrageous scenes in the, of course, gorgeous little Spanish island of Ceuta, which has got a population of about 30,000, 40,000 people. Well, that's more than doubled. Now, the majority of those individuals are back in Morocco, but the scenes were shocking. So my question is a simple one this morning. And it ties in with free movement and the EU and Brexit, and it's this, and I need you to help me. Has Europe fallen? 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Or leave us a voice note. I'm excited by my team today because a legend of talk, Johnny Hearn, is back. He's up there with Dave the engineer, who's still away having lengthy plastic surgery. Engineer Dave's having a bum lift. He's getting the turkey neck sorted out. And he wants a bigger décolletage. I said, Dave, you're perfect the way God made you, but he's such a perfectionist. Anyway, lovely to have John pressing the buttons. And we've got Ted Jeffrey as our executive producer this morning. So let's make it a good one. We've got Luke directing our TV output. So you can hear on the radio, Talk Breakfast, but you can also watch us. Head to YouTube, search Talk It Up, we pop. And I'm delighted to say that Agner is taking your calls. 03444991000. Has Europe fallen? This is Talk Breakfast. Let's talk. We've got one of the biggest names in British journalism joining me in just a couple of minutes' time to look at the front pages. But first, let me give you the headlines. You've got the Daily Mail, world exclusive by Alison Boshoff, wedding that shattered brand Beckham, revealed in a new book, the full excruciating story of this family split. And ministers must stop the Spanish border invaders reaching the UK as 60,000 migrants from Africa dramatically breach Europe's frontiers. Tories and Reform demand Burnham responds. Now, Andy Burnham has been very vocal since he became Prime Minister. How long's it been now? It's been a week and a bit, hasn't it? And he's said so much about energy bills. He said so much about local power and devolution and mayors and all of that. He said nothing about illegal immigration, nothing about the boats. So this is going to be the biggest issue facing him. I mean, yes, we've got an economy in the toilet. We've got a divided society. We've got crime and disorder, shoplifting, the decriminalisation of burglary. We've got vehicle crime, you name it. You can't wear a nice watch in a British city centre. All of that's happening. We've got an economy that doesn't live within its means, the cult of welfarism, where 600,000 households are better off not going to work. Yikes. We've got 9.5, 10 million people of working age not working. What a mess. We've got so many problems. But our biggest problem is that we're not a proper country anymore because we don't have borders. And that's the definition of a country. What is the definition of a country? Well, it's a designated political territory policed by a border and within which you have a nation who pay their taxes and pay for public services and policing and all the rest of it. That's a country. It's not complicated. It's a nation contained within a territory, and that territory is enforced. It's the same as your house or your apartment. Have you noticed that your house or your apartment has what they call a front door? Have you heard of that? Your house, but the problem you've got, you see, I know you understand that, and I understand it, but those that govern us don't. The smug, lanyard-wearing metropolitan elites, the chattering classes, the ruling class, the Islington dwellers who have a loyalty card at Gale's Bakery, they don't seem to understand that every house and every apartment has a front door which has something on it, or perhaps, if you like, in it, called a lock. And so when you go to bed at night, and that's what I do when I go to bed at night, I lock the windows and I lock the front door. I make sure everything's secure. Why do I do that? Because that's my home. I have no doubt you do the same when you go to bed. Don't get me wrong. If we hadn't lost our way as a country, I don't think you would have to lock all the doors. There are still places in the countryside where people don't lock their doors. John, you spend time in France, don't you? In rural France, I bet they don't lock the back door. Do they? Even in France now? Yikes. Plus ça change. But the bottom line is that you have a border for a reason. That's what a country is. And so this clown show of Europe, with Spain not able to maintain the integrity of its borders, not being able to decide who comes in and who doesn't, that's not a country. Spain is not a country at the moment. You're not a country if 60,000 people can wander in an afternoon, like swim to the shore. This is not 1287. This is 2026. And by the way, even in 1287, We had countries and we had a military then who policed the border. The borders have existed pretty much as long as we've had humanity. Because even if you go back to the Stone Age, you still have villages and hamlets, and you have local groups and tribes and populations that establish that area as their territory. It is a human thing to create a territory. So really, effectively, we've had borders as long as we've had humanity. And yet, in the sophisticated 21st century, a country like Spain, which used to own large chunks of the world, can't decide who enters and who doesn't. With all of the resources they've got, with all of the technology, all the CCTV, with a military, with armed cops, they can't decide who comes in and who comes out. It is a clown show from this once sophisticated continent of Europe, which gave the world Western civilization, which had riches, which had harmonious societies, which had national cohesion and identity, with the French and their incredible cuisine and their culture and their art, and Spain with its history, the United Kingdom, Germany with its engineering, and Bavaria, let's not forget the beer and the rather heavy bread that they eat, and of course the sausages. What is going on? What has happened to this once great, rich continent? Europe dominated the world. And of course the United Kingdom was the epicenter of the British Empire, the greatest empire the world has ever seen, in which we dominated a quarter of the globe. And now you've got all of these countries like Britain, Spain, France, Germany, they're all just heading south. It's quicksand, isn't it, for all of these countries? The civilization is disappearing. You go into any of our great European cities now, and you have folk that are not participating in the local culture, not speaking the language. You're in Barcelona, or you're in Paris, or you're in London. You could be anywhere. I mean, does national identity not matter? Does the indigenous language not matter? And by the way, this is not skin colour, because the United Kingdom is a successful multi-ethnic society. That's not a problem. That's not an issue. The UK, we have British ethnicity, and it's important not to gloss over that. But it's been multi-ethnic for, what, 6, 7 decades? It's not been a problem until the last probably 30 years, 25 years. I think it was Blair's time in number 10, opening the border to the east, rubbing the Tories' faces in diversity. That's, I think, when it all went wrong. Sowed the seeds for Brexit. So is this the Brexit moment? Is this the moment where the rather divisive campaign to get us out of the EU starts to look like a good idea? Because if we tear up the ECHR, get rid of the Human Rights Act, look again at the Refugee Convention, which is being exploited, then we really would have border control, and then we would be a proper country again. And as Ted Jeffrey, our executive producer, pointed out this morning, before we came on air, we had a 2-hour meeting. It began at 3. You know, we put a lot into this show. It's not just thrown together. I don't just turn up 3 minutes before we go on air, desperately looking for, like, microphones. That's not how we do it. The show's successful because we get in early and we take our time. And in our meeting, Ted Jeffrey said, is this the beginning of the end of the EU? And I think that's a very pertinent question. And I think it is. And I think that what's happened with Brexit is we just got in there early. Because if these countries, if the bloc cannot control its borders, then individual nations will kick off. That's why Meloni won. She's on the right politically. And that's why she'll no doubt remain as Italian Prime Minister for a long time to come. It's why Germany is shifting right. It's why France are shifting right. And change is coming. The public have had enough. It doesn't bode well for the EU project, because if you try to keep this enormous political homogenous bloc, but you can't have successful border control, well, then it's for nothing. So has Europe fallen? And by the way, a quick word on woke judges, because one of the reasons why this invasion happened from Morocco is that the Supreme Court in Spain decided that if you swim to Spain, you can't be deported immediately. I mean, who do these people work for? This is the Supreme Court of Spain. Surely the Supreme Court of Spain should have the best interests of the Spanish people at the heart, because it's the highest court in the land. And this court says, yeah, if you swim to Spain, you get to stay. I mean, if that's not an argument for a total political revolution and sack all of the judges, I mean, what is wrong with these people? So my question this morning is a simple one. Has Europe fallen? And what does it mean for us? And is Brexit starting to look like a very good idea? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Coming up, a titan of Fleet Street reacting to today's front pages.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 6:21. The front pages, Daily Express, exclusive, as EU country is swamped by 60,000 illegal migrants in 24 hours. Spanish border crisis is wake-up call for the UK. The Guardian, Burnham risks his first revolt over North Sea oil. Daily Mirror, funeral home of horrors. Never again. Grieving families demand public inquiry as heartless undertaker gets 20 years for fraud, which devastated 300 victims. Weekend, the Burnham bounce. Labour poll lead grows as Reform and Greens stumble. And the Daily Mail, ministers must stop the Spanish border invaders reaching the UK. Live in the studio, the former executive editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Mark.
This doesn't bode well for the future of the EU, does it?
It is a truly astonishing saga. It is everything come home to roost, isn't it? Not least because when you look at this, you realise that the Moroccan government must have facilitated this. They must have been actively part of how this happened. Now, it's been a response, hasn't it, to the lunatic who runs Spain, Sanchez, the Prime Minister there, and their desperate facilitation of anything to do with immigration. The same sort of facilitation, the same sort of bending over backwards to everybody from outside, to the detriment of everybody
inside. Well, he's granted
inside.
citizenship to 500,000 illegals.
At least half a
this
million.
year. Exactly, and I've heard in some circles it's closer to 1 million.
1.2 million.
So is that the latest figure?
That's the latest figure.
Wow.
So did the people of Spain, when they voted for this guy, know they were going to vote for an extra 1.2 million? I mean, this is Brexit come home to roost, isn't it? This is everything that we have feared. And, you know, when you looked at the pictures, you must have seen the footage. The listeners and viewers must have seen the footage and everything that Nigel Farage has been warning about coming home to roost. Did you see the picture of the guy who waded in from the sea carrying his bike?
I saw that. I mean, it's...
What an extraordinary statement that is. And let's not forget the Burnham boats, right? They had a pause for a while, but the Burnham boats are trucking these people in all the time.
750 on Wednesday.
And what are they? They are young males, mainly Muslims, as in not of the tradition of this country. And this is what our borders policy is facilitating. It is nuts. Has to stop. Has to be prevented. And, you know, we should be so grateful that we have seen this, that we have seen the reality of what is happening, because, frankly, these people want to come and live in the West. They want to come and live in Europe, which includes Britain, the island of Britain. They don't want to live there, but they want to bring their lifestyle with them. You know, it's an extraordinary warning to us all.
And there's no documentation. 60,000 people have swum to this Spanish island.
Oh, not just swum. They've climbed over fences.
Yeah.
The Moroccan government, the authorities have stood there and looked. Spain, you know, they're border guards. What border guards? You know, they're talking about sending military in now to guard the borders. Too late, fella. You know, this is a most extraordinary warning to us. This is what this is about. We've got to respond to this. We cannot ignore the warning on our doorstep. Meloni in Italy, although she hasn't got a border with Spain, thankfully for the Italians, but you know, she's having to strengthen her border with France to protect France from this level of migration. And it is absolutely true that 60,000 in one day is an exception.
Of course.
But what a warning. What a warning.
Well, it is an exception, but as I mentioned to you, and I'm glad you mentioned the boats here, we had 750 crossing on Wednesday alone. And it's still circa 30, 40, 50,000 people a year that are coming to the UK. The numbers have come down, but it's still too high.
But that's, you know, I've been reading this thing, the numbers are down. Yeah. Their numbers are down, Mark. They're down to only 750 a day. Whoopee!
Yeah.
For goodness sake. You know, and don't forget that 750 a day are simply the ones who are getting on boats and whatever. I read somewhere that there was something like 700,000 numbers of people immigrating into this country last year. Well, you know, this is a city the size of, I think just in the boat people alone are going to be something like a city the size of York.
Yeah.
Every year. Can you afford it? I can't.
Most definitely
Where
not.
are they, you know, where's the money coming from? Where's the money coming from? And yet you've got this Labour government who are going to facilitate this, and because they don't really see a problem, because they don't care about the issue of it. This is Britain. This isn't some sinkhole for the rest of Europe. Something has to be done. Something has to stop this. And here it is. This is the message. This is the warning. You look at these pictures. Look at these front pages. You know, and yes, North Africa is a long way from here. But what the Spanish, I mean, I'm afraid, amused by the idea that this is essentially triggered because the Spanish legal system said you can't walk into Spain and get citizenship, but you can swim.
Yeah, that's right. The Supreme Court have said they can't do what is described as hot returns if you've swum to the country, which is a mockery. And there's going to be a lot of public anger across Europe, isn't there?
Yes.
Because, you know, people in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, they're going to look at those pictures and they're going to be fed up with not just their own leaders, but the European project.
Do you remember when this immigration crisis started, Angela Merkel, whatever happened to her, she walked off, rubbing her hands with glee.
Into the sunset.
Into the sunset. She welcomed over 1 million in the first year and said, we must accept these people. Well, we are reaping the harvest now, aren't we? Because I can't begin to believe that anybody still believes the nonsense that these are persecuted refugees. These are economic migrants. They want a better, wealthier life than they've got in the Middle East, in Africa. And I understand that, but I don't want to pay for it. I don't want to be the person who's facilitating their better life. Let them have a better life in their own country.
And these men, we don't know their backgrounds. They haven't had the criminal record checks. Are there terror links? And do these men from a very different culture have a different attitude to women? Most likely they do. So you have the issue of crime as well as the economic impact.
It's crime, it's cultural. You know, I was on a bus, and a Muslim family were objecting to the fact that some old boy got on the bus with a dog.
Are you serious?
I am serious, yeah. I am serious.
That is shocking.
Because some aspect of Islam doesn't approve of dogs. Well, funnily enough, we Brits, not me personally, frankly, but we Brits like dogs. And they protested that this old boy was bringing his dog onto the bus.
And they're saying he shouldn't bring that dog on the bus.
Yeah, don't bring your dog near me.
This is the United Kingdom, a nation of animal lovers, where an elderly citizen is told not to take his canine onto a bus.
Yeah. Shocking. Shocking.
Well, the next thing will be, banned from having a pint in a certain part of a city. You know, no-go zone for booze and that sort of thing.
Well, there's already aspects of that with pets, with dogs. There's certain parts of cities where people are confronted in the streets about walking dogs because some Muslims don't like it. Now, don't misunderstand me. I was at a bus stop last night and there was a...
What's a rich man like you doing, taking so many buses?
I believe in supporting people like you.
I think, no, you're so taxed to the hilt now, you've got to go around on public transport.
Yeah, I'm down to that.
Rachel Reeves has been after your pension, hasn't she?
Yes.
But anyway, you were at the bus stop last night.
I was catching the 94, waiting for the 90.
Were you drunk again, Neil?
Not yet.
All right, glad to hear.
Actually, I'd been to a concert and I hadn't even had a drink.
Outrageous.
I was furious.
I don't recognise this man.
Yes, who is this? And there was a street person who said to two young Muslim girls, would you buy me a non-alcoholic drink. And these young girls, they looked at her, it was a lady, and said, yes, come into the shop and I will. And that was lovely. It was generous, it was kind.
For sure.
And, you know, yes, we want that. But at the same time, it's got to be at our choosing. This is not at our choosing. You know, this, did you vote for that? Has anybody voted for this? Now, you know, no, it's not Britain, but those 750 on the Burnham boats that you were talking about earlier, we didn't vote for that, did we?
Has Europe fallen? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk Breakfast, 6:33.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Has Europe fallen? Live in the studio, the former executive editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. And having called the show on 0344 499 1000, I'm delighted to welcome Barry in Norwich. Barry, welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well.
Guest as well.
Barry, has Europe fallen?
Well, I don't know about that, but all I'd like to say, I listened to your monologue when you started and you were saying before we've always had borders and that. The one thing we haven't had is the EU since the dawn of time. Yeah, right. And I think the Schengen area needs to go. And I think Giorgia Meloni made the right decision by sealing up the borders of Italy. And I think the EU is finished. I really do. We cannot have a system where people who blow people up, kill people, come into the country illegally can go through one start at the top of the continent and go all the way through to the bottom of the continent without being checked. It's just, we need borders for the protection of the citizens of that particular country. It's as simple as that.
I agree. Barry, stay with us if you can. Neil, Barry says the EU is finished. Is he right?
Sadly, Barry, I'm not sure you are. You may be premature, but it's certainly creaking at the edges. You've got to remember that essentially the EU is an unelected group of people sat there in Brussels. No citizens actually vote for them. Nobody actually in Brussels making all these big decisions has a single person electing them. So all they've got, they're self-perpetuating. That's all they care about. And I wish you were true. I voted for Brexit. I don't regret that because what I voted for was the right for me and my fellow colleagues, my fellow citizens, making the decisions about what affects my and my family's life and not some unelected, anonymous people in Brussels. And you've got to remember, they look after themselves first.
Oh yeah, of course.
Barry?
That's why I voted Brexit, really. But I think if countries like Italy, like Giorgia Meloni, and that start sealing up their borders and start saying, no, we've had enough. We cannot. You can't have 60,000 people swimming across to an island, yeah, off the Spanish coast, and basically just walking into it. You can't have it. Yeah?
Well, Barry, I think that it's the beginning of the end for the EU, and I'll tell you for why. Because you can have someone like Maloney who restricts the rules around Schengen, which is the free movement. But as long as you're an EU member state, Barry, and as long as you're in the ECHR, you can never properly close your borders. And that's why I think that eventually Italy will be out, France will be out, and even Germany will be out.
Yeah, and I think when that starts happening, the EU will crumble. You know, when the main pillars of a building starts to fall, then the whole building will collapse.
One of the interesting things about this scandal is that what you see very often when you get a rebellion within the EU, it is simply one country. It was Hungary at one stage. It was Poland at one stage. It's Maloney in Italy at one stage. Except this time, Barry, Maloney's not alone. There have been at least 6, 7 other countries, from Finland to France to Italy, that have all actually risen up and have said, no, this can't go on. That's the sort of crack in the wall.
They're all sounding a lot more right-wing, aren't they, the governments of these European countries?
I don't believe it is right-wing. I believe it is sensible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So Barry, and what about for us in the UK? Is this the moment where Brexit starts to look like a good idea?
Well, I think Brexit was a good idea. The problem is Brexit hasn't been implemented by governments since Brexit. You know, I voted Brexit like your guest said. You know, I wanted to make decisions. I wanted to elect people. I didn't want decisions being made by people in Brussels who had nothing to do with this country. Yeah, I listened to people like Margaret Thatcher back in the day who said that there was no way that we could have a same currency. There was no way that we could be controlled by a federal state in Europe. So that's why I voted out. It was nothing to do with racism or anything like that. I just wanted sovereignty. I wanted sovereignty brought back to this country, and we haven't had a government since Brexit who has implemented it. It's not Brexit has failed; it's governments have failed to implement it.
Quite right.
Yeah.
Barry, thank you for a brilliant call, and we will speak soon. Chris is in Slovakia. Good morning, Chris.
Hello, Mark. It's Cliff, actually. But,
Cliff, sorry about that. Hello, Cliff. Thank you for calling the show, young man.
That's okay. Right, so just a thing. I was just talking to your call taker or editor or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I travelled down from Slovakia to Montenegro last weekend. I got one stop on the way down, and that was at the Bosnia-Herzegovina border. And then I came a slightly different way home. Nothing shady, I was just fishing. I got bored with the highway, so I wanted to see a bit of the countryside. 3 times I was stopped, and I was stopped at the Montenegro-Serbia border, quite a long stop and check of all passports and stamps. And then Serbia to Hungary, it was quite a detailed search. So to say that they're not operating border controls, I think is really down to the countries you pass through. Certainly the former Eastern European countries, really, they seem quite hot on it.
Yeah, Neil?
Well, that's the truth. Eastern Europe, because of their traditions, I mean, don't forget, Eastern Europe was basically occupied by the Soviet Union for many, many years of the early years of the EU. And there's far more of a recent tradition there. And, of course, they've had their own problems, so they've needed that. But in the main body of Europe, the place that most migrants are trying to get to be honest, is not Montenegro, is not Bosnia-Herzegovina. It is mainland Western Europe. Yeah. And that's where Schengen was aimed for. And you can move anywhere. Once you're in Europe, you can go anywhere you damn well like.
Cliff, do you think that the EU is going to wake up to this problem? Does what happened in this Spanish island move the dial on this issue?
Well, it has to. I mean, if you take into consideration problems we've already got, I mean, you know, new government, no change in the arrival of migrants. In fact, it seems to be stepping up now in terms of their developing business model, bigger boats, more people, one trip, less cost to them. But what I would say is that the Schengen, we travel UK and back often, and we don't get stopped. In fact, we have, sorry, I tell a lie, we're starting to get stopped in Austria. Austria seems to be quite keen on a border there. But once you get into Austria, it's you go all the way home from Austria to the middle of Slovakia, where we live. But one thing I will say, just to finish and maybe give you a smile on your face, when I was stopped at Hungary, the guys were quite thorough searching. They were checking fishing kit and stuff like so on. And they said, don't they do this in England? And I said, well, apparently not. And they all laughed. I found that quite amusing.
Oh, Cliff, great. Listen, great call. And thank you for giving us a smile at the end of that. Stay in touch with us, Cliff, because it's good to have a man in the field there in Slovakia talking about how it's working out with border control. In the end, I mean, Nigel Farage did a video about it yesterday, and he said that we have to wake up, that the authorities have to wake up to the problem. Is that going to happen, Neil?
Well, all the evidence would suggest no, wouldn't it? The blob, that, you know, this amorphous mass of civil servants who basically run the country, the establishment, the Keir Starmers of this world, thank goodness he's gone, but the Keir Starmers of this world, it doesn't affect them.
Yeah.
They sit there in their bistros in North London, chatting away around their dinner tables. They're not affected by it. It's ordinary people. The people who were on the 94 bus last night, the real people. Interestingly, Cliff just talked about the getting stopped in Austria. What happened in Austria a year or so ago? They got a right-wing government.
Yep.
And there's the difference, that you're starting to see that the right-of-centre governments, I don't want to use the word right-wing, I don't agree with it, but the right-of-centre governments are now getting elected because people are saying, ordinary citizens are saying, listen to me, hear us, and that's where the issue is.
And it's the people versus the elites, which is exactly what Brexit was. It's exactly what Trump was in November of 2024.
It's what Maloney is.
And it's what Maloney is. And let's hope that we get that change across Europe, and maybe in 2 or 3 years' time, we get it here as well. Let's take a voice note from Nick in Loughborough, if we can.
Regarding the invasion in Ceuta was the beginning of the end of the EU. Well, I think it more fundamentally is the beginning of the end of Europe. Quite simply, this is a manifestation of the beginning of the end of our European culture, and it will extend to our shores if we don't deal with it. Have a good weekend.
Nick, thank you for that. And it's a pertinent voice note, because that's our question this morning. Has Europe fallen? Donald Trump said 3 years ago, if you don't control immigration, you're not going to have a Europe anymore. Is that how it's playing out? 0344 499 1000. More to come. Talk Breakfast, 6:46.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You're listening to Talk Breakfast, and there is new mayor of Greater Manchester, but elected on a 25% turnout. So is that a problem in regard to Andy Burnham's efforts to devolve power to the regions? With me live in the studio, the former executive editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. This is the problem, Neil, isn't it? Because in the 80s, Margaret Thatcher centralised power, and the reason why is because the local authorities were living beyond their means. They were incompetent, there was corruption, there was extreme left-wing politics, and there was low turnout. Here we go again.
Here we go again. I used to live in County Durham. And in County Durham, the turnout was so low, and it was so one-way, Labour, that they used to reckon you could put up a donkey in Durham City and it would get elected mayor, because people just didn't vote. They didn't believe that their voice was being heard.
So it was only the sort of hardcore party loyalists that were actually voting. Yeah,
exactly. 25% turnout in a city like Manchester, a great, vibrant, throbbing city with a very high-profile mayor who made sure that he was constantly on the front pages. He was constantly on the local radio. He had his own programme he used to go on. So, you know, considering the amount of publicity local democracy in Manchester has had in the last 6 months, the last year, and you still only get 25%. That's very damning.
And it's a problem that if you have low turnout locally, you're devolving power and money to these regions, and they're effectively unelected, and that is a problem.
It's a huge problem, because what you're finding, particularly in the cities of Britain, frankly, is that the electorates are getting more and more divisive. They are... you look
tribal.
At Birmingham.
Yeah.
Tribal is absolutely the word. You look at Birmingham, there's whole areas of Birmingham who vote for cultural reasons. Well, that disenfranchises, unfortunately their own fault, from people who aren't in that tribe. And so therefore you have a growing problem. Don't forget, Birmingham was a city where they put together an appalling con, as it were, that got an Israeli football team banned from having fans at, I think it was Aston Villa.
It was, yeah,
right?
Park, yeah.
And it was a complete stitch-up between local community leaders and a local authority that depended on that local community. They went to protect their vote, their particular quarter, the quarter of the people who are going to keep them in power. That's the problem with devolution, unless people are heavily invested in it.
Well, I agree, and I think with devolution you're going to have a lot of Green Party councils, because they get their people to vote.
Look at the lunatic in Hackney. This woman who has decided to sever links with Haifa in Israel, and she gave them the ultimatum of the 7th of October to respond. What kind of people are these?
Yeah, yeah.
And they just don't care, because everything is justified in their particular drive to get what they want in their narrow little world.
And can we think of an example of devolution working? Look at health and education outcomes in Wales and Scotland. Look at the economies of Wales and Scotland. Look at, for example, in Edinburgh, the highest drug deaths in Europe. What about the NHS in Wales, effectively bankrupt, all as a result of devolution?
Absolutely.
It's not a cure-all.
Where has it worked? You know, the truth of the matter, I believe the idea is right.
In principle,
but
right?
In principle.
And in countries like Germany it works well, which is very regional, and of course the best example would be the United States.
Yes, but the difference there is their society was set up with the states having from the beginning real power. And, you know, Germany, just like America really, is a collection of states. We are not a collection of counties. We are, in this country, much more large, as it were.
Yeah.
And so you've got this situation, you've got the tribalism, as it were, that you see in Scotland, where essentially anything Scotland good, anything rest of Britain is bad. And so you still have this lunacy of so-called independence. And who's going to pay for that?
Well, that's a million-dollar question, and I mentioned a lack of accountability if you've got low turnout. That's a democratic issue. I mentioned incompetence, and I mentioned corruption potentially, but there's also waste, isn't there, and bureaucracy. We've got inflation, we've got low growth, we've got open borders, we've got the highest energy costs in Europe, Neil. How does more politicians help us?
Well, it doesn't, does it? I mean, it simply doesn't.
Well, if you ask Andy Burnham, apparently that's the answer, more politicians.
Yeah. In Britain, you've got something like, I think it is, 42 separate police forces, right? Every one of those police forces has independent, they're run locally. They have independent right to decide what make of police car they have, okay? And so what you have is this county here has completely different facilities from that county there. It's just lunacy.
It makes no sense. You would
no
never run a company
sense.
like that.
No. Yeah. And there you touch upon it. How many of these people, how many of the people in the in Andy Burnham's cabinet have ever worked in private industry?
Well, now it's zero, because there was the prisons minister, Lord Timpson, who, of course, helped build that amazing chain.
Yeah.
And he's out, so now it's zero.
None of them. In fact, to a large extent, like the Labour Party membership itself, it used to be working class people, right? It's not now. It is, Labour is largely run by middle class, university educated public servants, right? Where are the real people in the Labour Party? Where are the real people in this government who've actually gone to work and known if they screw up, they could get fired? No one gets fired in public service. No one ever... Has anybody been fired from all the hospital scandals that, for some reason, all appear to be coming home to roost? Yeah. If you look at the child sex abuse scandals around the company, how many council bosses, how many social services leads have been fired because of that appalling scandal? None.
I think 26 teachers were fired last year in England.
26.
Let that sink in. Joan's in Sunderland. Joan, good morning. You're live with Neil Wallace, the former executive editor of the News of the World. Good morning, my love.
Hello to both of you. I class the EU as committing suicide, but you will not get rid of these people. They cling on to power. The ECHR is failing. It's been failing for years. That document was written with different things in mind, and these human rights lawyers, it's just a gravy train for them. There's no sensible decisions being made by these unelected people. When you think about the guy who was allowed to stay because his son, Albanian, didn't like the chicken nuggets in that country, were chicken nuggets invented when the ECHR was put into being? It's just rubbish. And the whole thing is, if you look at what the EU is, they spend more time worrying about straight bananas. The last thing was you couldn't say orange marmalade, a citrus squash. And people want to be back in there. They must need their heads examining. There's no decent judgment come out of that whole union for I don't know how long. and until we come out of the ECHR and get a British Bill of Rights, this will go on and we are going to be swamped. It's absolutely terrifying. We've seen what's happened in Spain. That we're watching the death of a nation because that many people that just can't contain the whole culture. Everything about that nation is going to change. Its traditions, its culture, its heritage, its religion. It's going to be just like diluted.
Well, it's not going to be Spain anymore, is it?
No, it isn't. But people in this country want to wake up, and this government, this Burnham guy, Burnham Boat, he was just parachuted in. I don't know how he got to be Prime Minister. They have no intention whatsoever to do anything about it. I don't know who's pulling these strings, because he got where he was. Not that was happen chance, because that's been planned over a long while, and there's more to come.
Joan, I wish we had longer, but you spoke so well. Promise me you'll call again soon. You're a very wise lady. The death of a nation, says Joan. More to come.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Minutes past 7, top of the morning, one and all. Happy Saturday, welcome to Talk Breakfast. Your weekend starts here. I'm Mark Dolan, a big 3 hours to come. And Europe in meltdown as Italy closed their border to Spain following the wild invasion of 60,000 Moroccans in the last 48 hours onto a Spanish island. Is this the beginning of the end of free movement and the wider EU project? And what happened to Europe? this once great continent? Why has it abandoned its riches, its culture, its civilization with open borders? It was 3 years ago that Donald Trump said if you don't control immigration, you're not going to have a Europe anymore. Was he right? And what are the implications for the United Kingdom, for you and I? Do Europe's open borders pose a threat to the British way of life? And does this crisis finally demonstrate the opportunity presented to us by Brexit? Are we lucky to be out? Because if we tear up the ECHR, look again at the Human Rights Act and the Refugee Convention, we can stop the boats. And my question to you is a very simple one this morning. Has Europe fallen? 0344 499 1000. Is it too late to save a continent that once dominated the world? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. Let's talk. And let's do so in the company of two very good friends of mine, the former executive editor of the News of the World, Fleet Street legend Neil Wallace, and down the line, the former Labour MP and now Reform UK supporter, entrepreneur and author, Simon Danchuk. Simon, welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good to be with you.
Is Europe finished?
I think it is in many respects. I think we've got a major problem here, haven't we? I mean, the good news for Britain is that we're an island distinct from Europe, the European mainland. But what we've seen in the last 48 hours is just devastating, isn't it? And it's all of its own making. I mean, this is what Spain has managed to achieve by effectively opening its borders and creating an amnesty for anybody from Africa that comes in there.
Most definitely. Well, there was that verdict on the part of the Supreme Court in Spain, the highest court in the land, Simon, that decreed if you swim to this Spanish territory, you can't be deported immediately. I mean, with friends like that, who needs enemies?
Well, that's right. So the Spanish have got a similar problem to what we have in terms of their courts, and it's overreach, isn't it, in terms of the judicial system. We have it here, and they apparently have it in Spain as well, where the courts are making parliamentary decisions, effectively. It should be our politicians making these sorts of decisions. But, of course, there's legal overreach, and that's what's happening in Spain.
And it boils down to woke judges, doesn't it, Simon?
It does indeed, and very much in terms of interfering in our immigration system. We've got it here. They've obviously got it in Spain too.
Most definitely. And there was the decision to grant citizenship to 1.2 million illegal immigrants, which equates, Simon and Neil, to 2.5% of Spain's population naturalised in one fell swoop with just one signature, one swipe of a pen.
And my worry is that Andy Burnham will go down a similar route. He's already talking about giving illegal immigrants the right to employment in Britain. And one of the reasons we don't allow illegal immigrants who come into the country the ability to work is because it becomes a magnet. It encourages more people to come here. So Andy Burnham's position on this is very difficult for the British public. He's made very little comment since he was mandated to be our Prime Minister all of a sudden. We should have real concerns about the situation here.
Neil Wallace, if you were still editing in Fleet Street, how would you be covering this story?
Very angrily. It's an extraordinary story. And what comes through, the same sort of thing seems to infect the Spanish, is that the sort of political classes don't seem to like Britain, British people. Why is there this hunger to somehow eradicate Britishness? It utterly defies me, this great country. And just the idea that somehow they think that it is the way forward to denigrate it, to run it down, to just damage the very, very concept of being British.
And to fill it with foreigners, put bluntly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's happened, isn't it?
Britishness should be taught in school.
Our population has grown by 10 million over the last 2 decades via immigration.
It's just unbelievable. You've only got to travel around our big cities and then travel around outside our big cities and see the difference. But the power base that Burnham is now actually putting into concrete is in those big cities, because that's where the large numbers of votes are. And those ordinary people, I travelled through Wales the other week. I'm going to Cornwall today. I spent a lot of time in the northeast. It's becoming a different country. Britain is sort of dividing into these influxes of the cities where people like Burnham are trying to concentrate power and votes. And that's what it's about. It is a venal exhibition of simply buying votes. It's absolutely pork barrel politics.
If you import lots of low-skilled workers into the country, they're going to vote for a left-wing party, aren't they?
Of course they are. Of course they are. Just look at the benefits bill. Just look at how much money that ordinary good working class people, ordinary people earn and pay their taxes, and where that money is going. What an incredible idea. There's over 1 million young people in this country who are not in education or training or employment. What a waste. Yet, you know what? They think that's a perfectly reasonable deal, a perfectly reasonable way forward. They are creating future voters. Why would you vote to cut your income off? It's just nuts.
Yeah, if you have a cult of welfareism where you're better off at home than going out to work, and if you have open borders, that equals left-wing governments for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. The next thing they'll try to do is try to bring in proportional representation, because that will erode. First past the post means a party gets elected and a party carries the can if they get it wrong. Look at the Tories. They got it wrong, and did they pay? But what will happen is that I think that Burnham will try to bring in proportional representation, which means, like in Germany, there is no decision-making possible, because it's every little interest group.
Even if you have a Conservative administration, the left-wing parties will hold the balance of power.
Precisely.
And therefore you can never have proper Conservative policies, which you need, as is being demonstrated by George Meloni in Italy. It's the only leader in Europe at the moment showing leadership, closing the Italian border.
And the alternative is that you have a British government at the moment who's never had to work properly, who's never had to work in private industry and justify their existence. They've never been in a situation where they face being fired for their incompetence. They just get moved to another comfy job.
Neil Wallace, always a privilege to have you in the studio. I know you've got to hit the road. Safe trip to Cornwall, and come back and see us soon. A titan of Fleet Street, Neil Wallace. Neil, and they're going to cover you with pictures so you can zoom out so you're not late for Mrs. Wallace. He hasn't even got time for his favourite sausage, egg and chips, which is an absolute
No
crime.
chips.
Oh, is that right? Sausage and eggs and a cup of tea. A couple of slices of toast. If anyone's earned it, he has. Simon Danchuk, can we talk about the fact that Manchester have a new mayor, but unfortunately on a turnout of 25% of the vote. And this is at exactly the moment that Andy Burnham thinks the answer is more devolution.
Yeah, I mean, this is not an endorsement for devolution, is it? I mean, a quarter of the electorate decided to turn out and vote in an election which the imposed Prime Minister insisted that the Greater Manchester people have when he jumped ship for Westminster. 25% turnout just doesn't endorse anybody. I mean, the idea that Labour have won this, I mean, that's not a surprise in itself. but it doesn't bode well for his devolution plans. There is no appetite. This is the reality. And I make this point on a number of occasions. We're a relatively small country geographically. The idea that we need lots of tiers of local government is a nonsense. There's no appetite for what Burnham's proposing, and there's no evidence to suggest that it actually works. Quite the contrary.
No, I think it's a fairy tale. I mean, local mayors having more power or a share of the income tax take, having devolved powers, that's not going to fix inflation. It's not going to fix youth unemployment, which is the highest in Europe. It's not going to fix energy costs, which are highest in the Western world. And it's not going to stop the boats.
No, absolutely right. And, you know, we already have tiers of local government. We've got parish councils, we've got town councils, we've got city councils, unitary authorities, metropolitan authorities. Then we've got regional government, Greater Manchester and South Yorkshire authority, combined authorities. And then we've got Westminster. We don't need all these politicians. Andy Burnham's idea of creating more politicians, I think, is not what the British public wants, and he doesn't have a mandate to do this. This wasn't in the Labour manifesto at the last general election. And expanding that radically is quite clearly shown to not be what the British public want. 25% turnout is not a ringing endorsement for his proposals.
No, and we do face very real problems, in particular the cost of living crisis, open borders and high energy costs. Those are some really big areas, non-existent growth. And this feels very performative. It feels like political theatre from Andy Burnham, this push for devolution.
I think that's exactly what it is. I think it's a distraction, to be quite honest. This 10 Downing Street of the North, what is that all about? Neil is there going off to Cornwall. How is Cornwall served by this 10 Downing Street of the North? How is the North East served by this? People have real concerns about that. Look to Scotland and look to Wales and their performance over the last few years since we've had devolution. The NHS in Wales has been a complete catastrophe. Nobody would argue that the SNP's rule in Scotland has been a great success. So the idea of devolving power to local government is shown not to work in a particularly good way. And we've always managed to do things very well from Westminster. Let's just focus on that, less of the distraction, and start performing for Britain.
Well, he's Britain's first PR PM, isn't he, Simon? Because if you look at it, it's headline driven at the moment rather than tackling the problems the country faces. So, for example, he wins plaudits for helping us out with our electricity bill. Well, that will come to the princely sum of 45 quid a year saved on our electricity bills. 45 quid a year. I don't know anyone for whom that moves the dial. And also, with inflation, it's going to be up 90 quid anyway, so you won't even see anything for that reduction. Similarly, he's described help for pubs as the cavalry is coming. Well, no, it looks like a dead donkey because it's £1,000 a year that pubs will save. This is trivial amounts of money. This is trivial support. And in many ways, this is trivial politics.
It really is. I mean, the amount of time he's spending recording videos for social media purposes, it must be several hours a week. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Yeah. It won't. The one that we see won't be the first take, will it? He's not that good a performer, and that's really concerning for us. So he's wasting a lot of time doing social media. He's making one announcement after the other, as you point out. Many of them aren't substantial or move the dial in any significant way. But it does, to me, indicate that he's preparing for a possible general election later this year. And that's the bigger issue. I think he's preparing for a general election probably in November. Now, he'll be watching out how the opinion polls go. But that's what these announcements are like. He's avoiding scrutiny. Parliament isn't sitting until September, and then it goes into conference recess. It only sits for 2 weeks in September. Then they go back into conference recess, which lasts about a month. And then before you know it, I think he will call an election. I think that's his intention, to get that mandate that he currently doesn't have.
And the problem is, if he goes to the country in November, there'll still be a bit of a Burnham bounce. He can blame Starmer for all the problems in the country. You've also got a reform project which is in disarray because of controversy surrounding donations to Nigel Farage. So from a cynical point of view, November is the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you recall, Gordon Brown recently said, when asked what advice he would give to Andy Burnham, was, well, don't listen to me. And what Gordon Brown meant by that, I am in no doubt, is that don't do what I did in 2007. And if you recall, Gordon Brown was tempted to go for a general election in the autumn, winter of that year and failed to do so. And I think it was one of his biggest regrets, because he could have probably won it then, as opposed to losing it badly in 2010. So I think it's very much on the cards for Burnham to try and get that mandate that he strongly lacks. And as you point out, the other parties aren't in a great position. He'll catch them on the hop, and he has a chance. He'll have a much reduced majority, and at worst, even if he loses, he could still go into coalition with the Liberal Democrats, and that's why you're seeing those two, Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems, and Burnham, cozying up to each other. They're not attacking each other, and that's because they're preparing for a possible coalition.
Fascinating. I'm delighted to say that Simon Danchuk, former Labour MP and now Reform UK supporter, is going to stay with us. More front pages and a simple conversation this morning. Has Europe fallen? My phone number 0344 499 1000. Talk Breakfast, it's 7:20.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Colin says, Mark, why don't you mention Enoch Powell and his 1968 Rivers of Blood speech, which warned us all about our future regarding migrants. Good morning, Mark, says Trevor in Harrow. Even though I think the left are totally crazy in their ideas, they always seem to be so well organised. I'm going to have 1,000 people plus out to protest at a moment's notice with pre-printed placards and loudspeakers. How do they manage it? Well, Trevor, you're so right. I'm going to coin the phrase of my good friend Mike Neville, ex-top cop, who says the left, they never sleep. Speaking of which, on the Jeremy Vine show, one of their commentators said that we should welcome illegal immigrants and help them to set up a business. Have we got the clip? Let's take a listen.
I've said this before years ago on your show. Go down to the beach, welcome these people. They are the very definition of entrepreneurs. They have travelled, they've used up their life savings, they've travelled across deserts, difficult seas, they've beaten the odds. They are entrepreneurs. Meet them on the beach, give them a grant to set up in business. They will be successful business people within 10 years. I have a few caveats. No benefit. You break the law, you're out. No ifs and buts.
And no
but
criminals.
These people, we can all think of immigrants. Immigrants built this country. Immigrants work harder than most people who live in this country. Let's welcome them.
What about that? Just stop trying to prevent them coming here.
And welcome them.
Welcome them.
Simon Danchuk is a former Labour MP, now Reform UK supporter, broadcaster and entrepreneur. Simon, this guy wants to welcome illegal immigrants and help them set up businesses. These people aren't right in the head. The issue is that it's people like that man who are at the top of government and at the top of our bureaucracy.
That's not an unusual view that that guy has got, is it? And I have to apologise to listeners. I believed many mainstream politicians for years that when they said they wanted to stop the boats, when they wanted to stop illegal immigration, when they wanted to reduce immigration coming into this country, I actually believed them, from Tony Blair through to Gordon Brown through to the various Conservative prime ministers that we had. I genuinely thought that that's what they wanted to do. But it's only in recent times that I've come to the conclusion that's not been the intention at all. They've been lying to us, quite literally. They have no intention of stopping illegal immigrants coming into this country because they believe in open borders, not dissimilar to that guy talking on the Jeremy Vine show. They think it's beneficial to the country. They think we should be diluting the population of Britain. That's their worldview. There's no other conclusion to reach than they believe in open borders. And it's this uni-party, you know, the Conservatives as well as Labour, that take this view. There's no other explanation as to why we are allowing people to come into the country in the way that we are.
And why are governments across Europe, including in this country, so far away from where the public are on this? Why are the elites so supportive of open borders?
Yeah, I think there's a variety of reasons. You touched upon it earlier with Neil. Some of it's about votes. They think that migrant populations are more likely to support and vote for them. I think it's also about corporations, big business, wanting to dilute the workforce, to have a more competitive workforce, have people here who are competing for jobs so that wages are lower, and that has a big appeal, obviously, for large corporations. But I also think there is a view that borders should be more fluid. I think it's a world view amongst some people, some mainstream politicians, that the borders should be more fluid and that people should be able to move more freely between countries. And I think they see it as a solution to the developing world, to the third world, that if we, allow people in from Africa, which we've been seeing over the last 48 hours, that will help those countries rise up and we'll all be on an equal footing. I think it's sort of an international socialist view of what the world should look like.
And yet the political left used to be very big on border control because they understood illegal immigration was really bad for poor people in this country. Why have the left changed position so much, Simon?
Oh, that's right. And this is the interesting point about my politics. I don't think my politics have changed very much. I was traditional right-wing Labour, tough on immigration, tough on benefit cheats, tough on crime and disorder. And that was an understandable Labour view of the world. But the party has moved to this North London leftist Labour elite, encapsulated by Ed Miliband, Jeremy Corbyn, Keir Starmer, and it is being continued by Andy Burnham. This Manchesterism is an absolute nonsense, and that's where the party is now gone. That's why so many people have left the Labour Party. But it's the party that's moved. It's not many of the politicians that have moved. That's the reality of it.
And before I come to Billy in Belfast, Simon, policies championed by the New Left, including the economic suicide of net zero, open borders and the cult of welfareism where it doesn't pay to work, all of these policies are bad news for British working class people and yet championed by the left.
Yeah, and it's not sustainable economically. It's not sustainable, is it? A variety of the announcements that Andy Burnham has made over the last week or two aren't sustainable. And we're going to see, we've got a budget, I think, on the 28th of October. And John Healey, the new Chancellor, is really going to struggle to square the circle in terms of finances. It's going to be devastating for Britain, I've no doubt about that.
I think you're right. You've been right in the past. You'll be right again, Simon. Billy is in Belfast. Good morning, Billy. You're live with Simon Danchuk. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Simon.
Lovely to have you on the show, Billy. I've got a simple question for you this morning. Has Europe fallen?
It hasn't fallen, Mark, but it is on the verge. Everybody, the media, and including talk radio, keeps asking the question, why are all these politicians doing this? Why do they do this? Why do they do that?
Yeah.
They don't ask the question, who? This is a plan. There's no argument. I mean, a blind man on a galloping horse could see this. You know, if you take, for quite simply, Pedro Sanchez took over Spain as the Prime Minister. The next thing he did then, he gave amnesty. Then you had Britain allowed Spain to take control of the Gibraltar border. Then you have the government, or the court allows amnesty for anybody coming in if they're swimming.
Yeah.
Then you get this mass migration. This is all a plan. There's no ifs or buts about that. Now, who is doing that is something else. Whether it's the Kalergi plan, whether it's the WEF, the United Nations over in Europe, or the Fabian Society in Britain, this is a plan. And the only way this is going to stop, unfortunately, because politicians will not stop this, the only way this is going to stop is whenever the people rise, and I am not advocating violence in any way, shape, or form, but that is what is coming, because the people will go enough.
Well, yes, because you're right, because when it comes to the open borders, Billy, the governing class, the politicians and the public are in a very different place on this. And the public, including voters on the left, do not want open borders.
100%. But that is what we are being given.
Yeah.
We're being forced into this. You then take the next step. You've got the digital ID, the digital currencies. It's all to control
censorship, social media controls.
100%, mate. We brought in the Online Safety Act. You see Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. We're the four. If you look across the globe, every time anything happens in Britain, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand follow suit, or vice versa. We're the four. And if you actually read, as I said, the Kalergi plan, where Britain is the one has to fall first. They have got to get rid of the British state, remove any nationality and anything to do with Britain. They've got to destroy that. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Well, Billy, it's hard to disagree with you that there is a war on the very idea of the nation state and of being a country with a set of values, rules and laws. Billy, with regard to the UK, for example, now you're in Belfast, and I think a lot of people don't realise how impacted Northern Ireland has been by immigration.
Northern Ireland was left after Brexit. Northern Ireland was left because technically England, and I mean this is a belief across the country, England does not want Northern Ireland. They would dearly love Northern Ireland to go away because we're a chain, we're a millstone around Britain's neck. We have no economic value anymore, and we are being passed back to the EU, back to Ireland. There's no ifs or buts about that.
And do you think that's a particular problem on the political left in England, that there is no great affection for Northern Ireland?
Yes, I mean, what they should have done whenever we had Brexit, instead of saying about the border here, and I'm not going to get into the whole politics of it, instead of saying about the border, what they should have done, the British Westminster should have said to the EU, it's your problem, you deal with it. But they said no, and instead of putting the border across the Irish island, they put the border down the Irish Sea. You know what I mean? They cut Northern Ireland off. We cut it direct.
Northern Ireland stopped being properly part of the United Kingdom at that point, and it was a truly historic crime. Billy, before you go, I could talk to you all morning. You think that the open borders, the war on nationhood is a plan. Many would say that's a conspiracy theory and nonsense. Others would agree with you. Here's my question. If it is a plan, will it work?
At the minute, unless something drastic happens, and that is going to come probably in the form of the people rising, because you've got it's either the IRGC, you've got either the Wagner Group in North Africa, or, you know, bringing all these ones in, and the politicians do not want to stop it. That's plain. They do not want to stop it. And Andy Burnham was parachuted in, put into place. They had his offices in Manchester sorted out a month before they even had the by-election. This is all planned. And as I said, a blind man and a galloping horse could see this, but they don't want to admit it. They don't want to acknowledge it. And it's going to come to a head very, very soon. And like I talk about Enoch Powell's speech, there is going to be blood in the streets. Unfortunately, that is what's going to happen, because you see it every day. How many churches are being burned out across the West? Every time you turn the news on, you see another church has been burned, another one here, another one there. This is constantly going on, and the people have had enough, and they're going to rise, and there's going to be trouble, and there's going to be major trouble, and the police, the army are not going to be able to control this. There's no ifs or buts about that, and I'm not advocating it in any way, but something has to be done, or we're finished.
Billy, a very important and powerful call. I'm grateful for your time, your insight, your passion. And there's one thing that's very clear. You love your country and you don't want to lose it. And I think what we're seeing at the moment in real time is we're losing the very concept of the United Kingdom as a political national project. And we're seeing the slow death of Europe. I don't think that's an exaggeration. Change is the key word that Billy is talking about. He's worried that that may happen through violence, which we all object to, which we all condemn. But something's got to happen, and people will feel that if voting doesn't work, they might take to the streets. Simon, how do you follow that?
Well, I have a lot of sympathy with Billy's view, that no doubt about that. I think he's talking a lot of sense. We are in the last chance saloon. Britain is broken. And unless we take decisive action, Britain is not going to be what it used to be. It's facing radical change under successive governments, and Burnham is part of the problem. Is certainly not the solution.
And you're predicting a possible November election. I think that's a very smart observation, Simon. And it wouldn't be a great moment for the political right in this country, would it? An early general election, because you've got the Tories who are under better management now, but still a damaged brand. And then you've got Reform, who are fighting fires on their own front. So, you know, November, I mean, Labour probably win that election, don't they?
I think it's too early to say. I think there's a little bit of a Burnham bounce. We've seen that in the opinion polls. But I do believe that Reform can come back from where they are. They've lost a couple of percentage points, but I think they can come back from that. I think the British public can see that Britain is broken, that it needs some radical solutions.
Yeah.
And I think when push comes to shove, when a general election is called, I think Reform is preparing for one, you know, so nobody's unprepared for this. I think it's quite possible that it's going to happen, so they're preparing. I think Reform will do much better than the current opinion polls are suggesting. And what we might end up with is a centre-right coalition government. What we certainly don't want is a centre-left coalition government. So it's going to be one heck of a fight.
Well, I can see a centre-right coalition working, because I feel that Kemi Badenoch has made that easier by pulling her party to the right. I feel that Kemi Badenoch has rolled the pitch for a coalition with Reform UK, because I would argue the two parties are more ideologically compatible than they were 2 years ago.
Yeah, finally. I mean, Kemi Badenoch's taken the party to the right. You're exactly correct. European Convention on Human Rights, she's agreed to come out of that. She sacked some of the potential Conservative candidates. Grant Shapps and others have been thrown out of the party, not allowed to stand. So centre-left Conservatives aren't being allowed to stand in a general election. So she has moved the dial somewhat for the Conservatives. I would say that she has to do a lot more than she currently has done. She's performing better, and so she's moved more to where reform are. But I still think the British public want a genuine reform rather than a diluted Conservative Party. So everything will be to play for. I don't think we'll see any coalition or coming together before the general election. It's what happens after it when the results are in.
Simon, we always love having you on the show. Thank you so much for your time. Have a cracking weekend with the missus and your kids, and we'll speak soon. Simon Danchuk there, broadcaster, ex-Labour MP and now Reform UK supporter. So much more to come. Has Europe fallen, and is Brexit starting to look like a very good idea? Your calls next, 7:38, Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Has Europe fallen? Dan is in Liverpool. Good morning, Dan.
Having a lovely morning, like myself.
Oh, good man, good man. And listen, what do you think about those scenes on this Spanish island? 60,000 people turn up in a day.
I think you can only call it what it is, an invasion. Mark, I've spoke to yourself a few times before. You know, half Iranian, half English. Can I ask a genuine question? I was born in the UK, English mother, Iranian father. What would you call me? Am I an Englishman?
Yeah, I think you're British and I think you're English, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you're not genetically English, and neither am I. You know, my parents are Irish, so my blood and skin is Irish. I'm a paddy. If you cut me open, Guinness would pour out of my veins. But I consider myself an Englishman, and I consider you an Englishman too. Yeah. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's my view.
Thanks to left-wing EU policies and this Fabian society mindset, I get seen as another, and I have no problem with people thinking that, unfortunately. This is an absolute invasion, and unfortunately, until our leaders do something, I'm worried people are going to start taking things into their own hands. I am not inciting anything when I say that.
Yeah.
It is, if this was anything else, I say it's an infection, and this might get me banned from Talk Radio, so I do apologise. Every left-wing feminist who wants to complain about people like Andrew Tate or dangerous men, you are chickens voting for KFC. You have let Colonel Sanders into the hen house, and he's already getting his herb and spices ready.
Well, you're right to say that, and there's no way you'll be cancelled for your comments, Dan, because what we're doing is tolerating daily arrivals of people whose backgrounds we don't know, Do they have a criminal record? Do they have terror links? I'm talking about the boats here. 750 people came in a day, Dan, and of course, a different attitude towards women.
Can I say this, Dan? My father, God rest his soul, he came over and he was a genuine doctor. When I hear people on the left call these people doctors, engineers, it is literally spitting on the grave of people like my dad who legally immigrated here. Britain was a country known for how it used to love a queue, yet we are letting people jump a queue every single day. I despise left-wing people, unfortunately. I don't want to say I hate people because it's a very strong word, but over the years, I can't think of another word because they insult my father, they insult genuine people who actually want to help build Britain better. And for what? Once Britain's borders have gone, how long are these people going to be safe once they come to their ivory towers, their leafy villages?
I know. Stick an HMO or a migrant hotel in Islington. Dan, your call has been the highlight of my day.
Have a lovely day, Mark.
I mean that.
For everyone listening, there is hope and there will be a better future.
Dan, thank you for that. Only if we wake up and realise what's happening. And you've helped us do that, Dan, with a very important, very powerful call from a guy of, what would you call it, mixed race background. And I'm an Irishman myself, but we both love our country and we both want to save it. We have that in common. We're both foreigners. We want to save England and the UK. Dan, thank you for that. I'll come to Nigel in a second. Here's a voice note.
The result of the Greater Manchester election last night, the low turnout, I think, is because we've had a combined authority for about 9 years, and all it does is add to our council tax bill. It's not provided anything other than raising our bills. Also, it overrides what people want in the surrounding towns in Greater Manchester, and he talks about more devolution. Well, if this is what devolution is, it's just an expensive vanity project.
I couldn't have put it better myself. Jackie in Oldham, thank you for a fantastic voice note. Jackie, let's speak again soon. I think that this devolution plan is political theatre. It's not going to tackle inflation, high energy prices, low growth, youth unemployment, or the boats. Ain't going to fix any of those things. If I was Prime Minister, my focus would be the boats, youth unemployment, non-existent growth, and inflation. Energy prices. That would be my focus if I was Prime Minister. We've got a Prime Minister, a performative TikTok star, who wants to move power into the regions. Well, how's that working out for Wales and Scotland? Nigel's in London. Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. I hope you're well. We haven't spoken for a little while.
No, well, listen, you're a legend of talk. Great to have you on. Listen, Nigel, apologies in advance. I've only got a short window of time. What do you want to say, sir?
Well, I want to say that your Irish gentleman, who I enjoyed his conversation, there's not going to be any physical uprising. Thankfully not. I think we have to understand that this country is well and truly broken.
Yeah.
Reform are never going to form a government. They were decimated in Manchester last night. If they got so much following, they would have won the Manchester seat. They're never going to win a general election. And your esteemed guest a little while ago who suggested that they can do well in a general election, how are they going to suddenly find 300-plus candidates to become MPs? It's not going to happen. And there's never going to be a coalition between Reform and Kemi Badenoch because Kemi Badenoch doesn't want it. And I think, finally, if I may suggest, that illegal immigration by the form of people coming here by boats or in the back of trucks is never going to end for the very simple reason politicians do not want it to end.
Well, I agree with you. And Nigel, I also agree with you that I think November is going to be a stretch for Reform if there is a snap election. But if that's the case and we don't have an answer from the political right, surely we're done for, Nigel, as a country.
Look, I agree. I think you've got to give Andy Burnham some credit. I don't agree with any of his policies, but he is a breath of fresh air compared to super dull Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
He's embracing, he's already doing, which a lot of people can't see this, he's going around the country, starting his election campaign. He's appealing to a different demographic by YouTube, by TikTok, by social media, which Keir Starmer couldn't harness because he didn't have the personalities to do it.
Nigel, I wish we had longer. Great call, though. You are a legend. We'll speak soon. Have a good one, sir. You're listening to Talk Breakfast, 7:48. More to come.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 7:50, and I've been very critical of Andy Burnham since he became Prime Minister, because I don't like all of this positive PR he's had in regard to electricity bills and support for pubs, because I think it's thin gruel and small fry. But Ben in Stockwell begs to differ. Mark, why do you oppose everything Andy Burnham proposes? We need new thinking about how our country is run. £45 doesn't mean anything to you because you are a privileged man. Well, Ben, I am a privileged man. There's no question about that. Look at my job. I'm on the radio. It's a huge privilege and a great honour. So you're right about that. But I'm going to tell you that 45 quid a year is pathetic. It is absolutely pathetic. And this is a Prime Minister that says, I'm going to give people breathing room. For whom on the planet is 45 quid in a year breathing room? What is that per day? Is it like 7p a day or something? We'll have to get the calculator out. 45 quid is pathetic. And the reason, Ben, why I object is because he presents it as some kind of miraculous solution, amazing help for the public. I don't think so. I would also just stress, Ben, that notwithstanding the positive PR around that policy, with inflation, electricity bills are going up 90%. So it's still a net loss of 55. So that 45 quid, which is pathetic, we don't even get. But look, you're entitled to your view, and I love it when we disagree. So keep it coming. I've got the same thing here from, I've got so many messages coming in you wouldn't believe. Oh yeah, Carl is not happy. He said that, I remember why I don't listen to talk when Dolan's on. Anti-reform, turned off, bye-bye. Carl, I don't have a strong view on reform. I'm saying that I think a November election is going to be hard for them. I think they need a couple of years to get their ducks in a row, and then I think they can win. I think a snap election is going to be a challenge for Nigel. That's just my political overview. And Carl, notwithstanding, you know, who on earth am I going to vote for? I don't care who's in number 10 as long as they save the country. It is 7:53. Someone that could save the country is Talk's royal correspondent, Rupert Bell. Good morning, Rupert.
Well, I'll do my best, but people may feel a bit shortchanged. Perhaps that might be a view about Andy Burnham, but you never know. But anyway, here we go.
You talk a lot of sense when you're on the subject of the royals and sport as well. Rupert Bell, let's talk about Harry and Meghan, who managed to squeeze, it looks like, a trip to Scotland on their UK return. What's the story?
Well, Ian Wace, who's one of the richest men in this country, and has bought a great swathes of Scotland, and it's sort of a big retreat that actually has a charitable intent as well, in that it's a place for people to go and regroup. I think even the military and the Wace family, I believe, became quite close to William and Harry over the years. And he's a philanthropist, as I say. He's made masses of money, and it appears that the Sussexes went on holiday to this retreat in their recent visit to Europe. Now, I can't confirm or deny this, but obviously it's being reported that they did. I think they've been there before, and Scotland obviously has enjoyed, apart from during the Commonwealth Games, a most magnificent summer. And Scotland, as we know, is a fabulous country to go and visit. I shall be going up there myself to go to the Edinburgh Festival. Pity you're not appearing there, Mark, but, you know, those were the days. You probably did. But we digress. But it does show that, you know, Sussexes still have some friends who may be happy to help them out. But whether they had to pay for it, I'm not so sure. They went to this place, and as I say, if they went there, I hope the family had a lovely time, because I think Scotland is a great place to sort of regroup and sort of enjoy the splendid countryside. The Wace family, as I say, extremely rich, a family affected by tragedy, because Ian Wace's first wife was tragically killed in a car crash, with him driving in a car behind. He saw his wife being killed in a car crash in front of him. An absolute desperate story. So you understand the sort of philanthropic nature of him, because I don't know who recovers from something like that. He has remarried subsequently. But as I say, a man who has, as I say, earned significant sums of money and does try and do some good with it.
Rupert, in your view, what is the legacy of Harry and Meghan's UK return? We know that they spent an hour or two in the company of the King at Highgrove House. They clearly stayed, or at least visited, Althorp House, which is Diana's ancestral home and her place of rest. What do you think the legacy of that trip is going to be?
From a PR perspective, I think it's been indifferent. Obviously, he lost the court case, which didn't help. And obviously, then he turned on the British legal system. He did go to Invictus Games on his own, but did a good job. But overall, I don't think it's changed the dial at all. I think it might at times have irritated aspects of the royal family, at times thinking, oh, here we go again, elements of it. So, and even the sort of drip feeding of stuff and these dreadful photographs that seem to be being poured out from Meghan's Instagram account, which seem at times slightly weird. Maybe I'm biased, but I don't think it's achieved as much as they would have hoped. But I hope they've had, from a private perspective, I hope they feel it achieved something. But from a public PR perception, I don't think it achieved absolutely anything.
What do you make of rumours, as reported on the Mark Dolan show on YouTube, and my guest Sarah Louise Robertson, who's a well-connected journalist, that the King may invite Harry and Meghan to Balmoral this summer? Do you think there's any chance of that happening, Rupert?
I really wouldn't know. If there's anywhere where they should go and just be away from the prying eyes, then I would say Balmoral is it. But where are they now? Are they back in California, or are they reportedly down in Portugal? I don't know exactly their whereabouts, apart from endless Instagram feeds. So they might be going around somewhere. So yes, there may be an opportunity for them to go to Balmoral, and I would say that was be absolutely right. But again, away from all prying eyes, it must have to be on the terms that, yes, you can say they were there, but that's the size of it. No photographs, no nothing. And if there is, then that's the last invite you ever get from us. That should be the tone of it, because they need to rebuild trust if Harry is to have what might be deemed a normal relationship. I'm not sure William will be busting a gut to be there at the same time, because I think that is a very tricky relationship now, given the way that they have been pretty disrespectful to the Waleses over the last few years. So if it is, it would probably be, how many other members of the royal family will be there at the time? Obviously, some of them go up there for a long time. It is a family getaway and has been for many a long years. So if they do go, well, I hope the King is able to enjoy it and the Sussexes behave.
And Rupert, you are not just the best connected royal journalist in the country, but you're also quite posh yourself. Can you help us with the ultimate question? Is it Althorpe House or Althorpe?
Althorpe. Althorpe. It's a bit like you don't go to Belvoir Castle, you go to Belvoir Castle.
Well, there you go. Always with his P's and Q's. Rupert, have an excellent weekend. I know there's going to be a lot of sporting action that you'll cover. We'll catch up soon. Always a treat to have Rupert on the show. I think you will agree. Talk's royal correspondent. Lots more to come following this invasion of a Spanish island. Has Europe fallen? 0344 499 1000. It's all about your thoughts, your opinions. Keep it talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 8. Happy Saturday, one and all. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan. And some parish notices. I'm delighted to say that I'll be looking after the entirety of the Ian Collins Show next week from 1 till 4. So Talk Breakfast tomorrow morning from 6, as always. And 1 till 4, Monday through Friday of next week. Looking forward to it. Lots to come today. Europe in meltdown as Italy closed their border to Spain following the wild invasion of 60,000 Moroccans in the last 48 hours. Is this the beginning of the end of free movement? Is this the beginning of the end of the EU project? Let's talk about Europe. What happened to this once great continent? Why has it abandoned its riches, its culture, its civilization with open borders? What is going on? It was 3 years ago that Donald Trump said if you don't control immigration, you're not going to have a Europe anymore. Was he right? Is that how it's playing out? And what are the implications for the United Kingdom? Do Europe's open borders pose a threat to the British way of life? And does this crisis finally demonstrate the wisdom of Brexit? Are we lucky to be out? 0344 499 1000. Our question this morning is a simple one. Has Europe fallen? What do you think about that? Is it done? Is Europe done? Is that it? Is that it? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 8722. Leave us a voice note. Meanwhile, you won't believe this, and it's so surprising. Another Labour cabinet minister caught up in a CV row, this time Angela Rayner. And Manchester has a new mayor, but only off the back of a 25% turnout. So 3/4 of voters did not even bother to elect the Greater Manchester mayor, and yet we've got a Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, that wants more devolution. Well, how can you hand powers to local mayors and local authorities if people aren't voting for them? Surely that's a problem. I would call that a democratic deficit. Don't forget, in the 80s, I'm old enough to remember this, Mrs. Thatcher, the Iron Lady, she actually brought power back into Westminster, into Whitehall, because in the 80s, the local authorities were spendthrift, they were incompetent, they were corrupt, they were wasteful, they were all bankrupt. All the local authorities were absolutely skint. And no one voted for them, so she brought it all central. It went quite well, because in 1987, we had 5.3% growth. You'd take that now, wouldn't you? What is it at the moment? 0.000001. Has Europe fallen? 0344 499 1000. Dolan's dispatch at 9 o'clock. You won't want to miss that one. Europe's open borders experiment. So much to get through. Let's talk. And let's do so in the company of a very good friend of mine, retired former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
Great to have you on the show. Peter, what was your reaction when you saw tens of thousands of men spilling onto that Spanish island?
I thought, well, Spain, that's what you get for having a left-wing socialist prime minister and governments that will not fortify their borders, will not strictly impose the sovereignty of that country. And that, I'm afraid, is what you get.
Most definitely. And actually, I took a call earlier and it was very, very powerful because it was Joan in Sunderland and she just said, Spain is dying. I mean, that's what's happening to these Western nations, isn't it? They are dying.
Well, at the moment, I'm in Guernsey. I've been out here performing my show last night. And I used to come to Guernsey a lot in the 1980s and the 1990s. A truly beautiful part of the United Kingdom, albeit, of course, it has its own independent states.
Yeah.
And I've been speaking to a lot of people since I arrived here on Thursday. Taxi drivers, nurses, prison officers, people working in the hospitality industry. And there are recurring themes. Everybody mentions it. And guess what it is? Immigration. Concerns about uncontrolled immigration. Concerns about crimes that are covered up by the establishment. Concerns about a lack of truth being put out there for the residents to read, to see and to hear. And it is very, very similar themes to those which are happening on mainland UK.
Well, I completely agree. And Peter, the bottom line is that we've got to wake up, haven't we? That the public have to wake up and understand how our national identity is being eroded, how our economy is being destroyed, about how our society is being divided. It's the number one issue facing the country, bar none.
And as a perfect example of that, since the 22nd of July, 1,731 illegals have arrived on our shores. What a perfect example of everything you just described. Because with each and every boatload, our culture gets a little bit more diluted. Our values are yet again diluted. What used to be Britain, all those wonderful countries, Wales, Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, are all diluted and devalued. And so it goes until we get a firm, rigorous leader of this nation with a party that supports them, so that we can look east, because there is an example, if we look east to Poland, where they have invested billions on protecting their borders, where they do not allow illegal immigration, and where they are protecting, preserving, cherishing and loving their culture.
I think that's very well put. Let's take a listen to a contributor to the Jeremy Vine show on Channel 5, Peter, who I think, unfortunately, whilst he's entitled to his view, represents the woke establishment. Take a listen.
I've said this before years ago on your show. Go down to the beach, welcome these people. They are the very definition of entrepreneurs. They have travelled, they've used up their life savings, they've travelled across deserts, difficult seas, they've beaten the odds. They are entrepreneurs. Meet them on the beach, give them a grant to set up in business. They will be successful business people within 10 years. I have a few caveats. No benefit. You break the law, you're out. No ifs and buts.
And no
but
criminals.
These people, we can all think of immigrants. Immigrants built this country. Immigrants work harder than most people who live in this country. Let's welcome them.
What about that? Just stop trying to prevent them coming here.
And welcome them.
Welcome them.
There you go. These illegal immigrants, they're all entrepreneurs. I didn't get the memo, Peter.
And you see, that is the kind of pathetic attitude which is leading to the very erosion of this country, the very dilution of everything that I spoke about just a few minutes ago. And that is the kind of nonsense thinking that pervades throughout the left, the absolute left. You know, those idiots that stand up with their refugees welcome signs. We haven't seen many of those very recently. I wonder why that is. Maybe because people continue to flood into this country. It is the absolute antithesis of what this country needs.
Most definitely. Anthony is in Sunderland. Anthony, you are live with Peter Blexley. Good morning. Anthony, how are things with you? Are you well? We've lost the line to Anthony. We'll come back to him in just a moment. Ginny's in Northumberland. Morning, Ginny. Good morning, Ginny. Can you hear me? It's all kicked off. Ginny sounds like she's on a train. What I like about the Talk audience is you're all so busy, you've barely got time to appear on the show. Let's take a voice note first before we get a call.
Morning, Mark. It's Adrian from East Sussex. Thoroughly enjoyed Nigel's input a little while ago. I'm not quite sure if he was actually trying to audition for the new series of Dad's Army. He would be a perfect "we're doomed." Just to point out the bleeding obvious, Manchester is not a sign that Labour are so powerful. Manchester, with just 25% of the electorate getting off their arse, just shows that people are just totally disillusioned with Manchester and what's going on there. With regards to reform, he better watch this space, because they're not sitting on their asses either, I suspect. But anyway, yeah, I don't think there's going to be blood in the streets, but I do think there's going to be major issues because the public are just about had enough. And what's happened at Ceuta is a wake-up call for the whole country. Watch your space. Bye.
A very considered voice note. Thank you so much for that, Adrian. I think we've got the line back to Anthony. Good morning, Anthony. Oh, we're having one of those days. What we'll do, we'll put 10p back in the meter. Peter, can we get on to the issue of Europe? Because I just wonder whether Brexit is starting now to look like a very good idea indeed.
Well, I make no apology for once again mentioning the standout beacon of common sense, of preserving a nation that is Poland. I was there recently with a friend and our wives, and it was an absolute joy to be able to walk down the streets, at one point with my mate and I discussing football, while our wives were 10, 15, 20 yards behind us discussing something else. And we didn't have to turn around every 30 seconds to check that our wonderful women were okay. We spoke to taxi drivers, to people working in hotels, and everybody spoke about how safe they were. Not just how safe they felt, but how safe they actually were. They said, yes, there were some problems with football supporters, but other than that, the country was particularly safe. And that was because their borders had been reinforced. They are almost impregnable, and they do not let vermin into their country. They love their culture, they value its history, and guess what? They are proud to be Polish, and they want to remain Polish. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with being proud of your country, proud of your nation, and wanting to preserve it as it used to be.
Peter, is vermin strong language?
Yes, it is. But the person who killed Siobhan White is vermin.
Correct.
The two Syrians who were convicted last Friday of rape, they're vermin.
Yeah.
There are many, many other examples of utter filth, trash, vermin coming into our country, unchecked, uncontrolled, and not being sent back to far, far away lands like they should be. And we are deliberately creating victims of crime, numerous, countless victims of crime. There are stories in the paper on an almost daily basis of women being assaulted, being raped, and tragically murdered. And that has been allowed to happen. That has actually been facilitated by allowing these people into our country.
You are right about that. And a percentage of those people will be criminals, therefore vermin. And the truth is that we don't know the difference between folk fleeing God knows what, climate change or persecution, and those who will come to the UK and cause harm to our own citizens. If we don't know the difference, then none of them should come. Anthony, third time lucky. Good morning, sir. Anthony, you're live with Peter Blexley. What do you think?
Hello.
Hello, Anthony. We seem to have technical issues here. I might treat you to a new broadband, like Virgin Media maybe would be good. I think it looks like it's at our end. So, Anthony, it's me, not you. Delighted to say that Peter Blexley, who is on fire this morning, is going to stay with us. But this is our big conversation. Is Europe over? Is it done for? What do you make of this story? And is Brexit starting to look like a good idea? Lots more to get through. 8:18 Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:20 Talk Breakfast, and Peter Blexley is an ex-top Metropolitan Police detective. And Peter, some rare good news. Rapists will be banned from early release. An outbreak of common sense.
Well, yes, if you think that delaying early release is common sense, because let's recall what used to happen is that prisoners were automatically released after serving 2/3 of their sentence. Labour's sentencing bill, which comes into force in September, would have reduced that to half and possibly a third in some cases. But now, of course, because of the quite right outcry that it's caused, Burnham has announced a review, and they're leaking it that rapists will not qualify, but they will still be released early, just not exceptionally early under this new sentencing bill, which of course we have because generations of pathetic politicians have ignored the criminal justice system, and they have allowed it to rot and to decay, whereby the entire system is not functioning like it should do, from the police at the front line through to the Crown Prosecution Service, underfunded, underperforming, in many regards not fit for purpose, to the courts, who are not running at full capacity by any stretch of the imagination, through to the prison service, and we all know that that is in absolute crisis because of flaky, fluffy, woke, pathetic leadership, And then, of course, we end up with probation. Again, underperforming massively, making decisions that are dangerous to the public. So the entire criminal justice system is failing. And of course, every government has an obligation to look after its people and its country, to keep them safe. It's a government's number one priority, not £2 bus fares and the such like. The number one priority, and Burnham has ducked the issue. We're not hearing about it. Nobody is gripping it. And meanwhile, the streets of Britain, each and every day, become a bit more dangerous, and we are all at greater risk.
Can we turn the tide on Britain's lawlessness epidemic, Peter? Can the genie go back in the bottle?
Yes, of course we can. But what we need is strong, robust leadership throughout. Unfortunately, ever since Blair got elected in 1997, the pendulum of what was once upon a time common sense has swung massively to the left, accompanied, of course, by rampant left-wing ideology. And that has got us to the state that we're in, where people get in trouble with the police for misgendering and nonsense like that, and so much more that is based on what they call progressive, but actually are usually retrograde steps. We need strong leadership, strong management. We need to bring that pendulum back towards the centre from where it currently sits. And when we do that, we will get proper policing on the front line and beyond. We will have courts that sit to capacity virtually each and every day. We will have enough prison spaces built. We could get rid of so many foreign offenders. We could revolutionise the sentencing system. Then we will get somewhere towards safer streets, greater pride in our country, locking up the people who need to be locked up, and therefore making the country a more attractive place in which to live. It can be done.
And staying on that theme of can be done, we are lucky in the United Kingdom, are we not, Peter? Because we're not in the EU. And I think notwithstanding the strong leadership we've seen from Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, in the last 24 hours, closing the Italian border to Spain, she's largely powerless to stop illegal immigration because of the policies of the EU, none of which we are bound to. And if we do get out of the ECHR, if we look again at the Refugee Convention and the Human Rights Act, then stop the boats we can.
Yes, and I'm so glad you've mentioned the ECHR, because as long as we are a part of the European Convention on Human Rights, and as long as we are bound by the decisions of the European Court on Human Rights, Brexit, in many regards, is largely worthless. We have a ball and chain around our nation's ankle that keeps us stuck in those systems, that keeps us having to abide by their decisions, which almost inevitably damage the UK. And of course, we have to redefine our judiciary, our immigration tribunals, and so much more about the country, because they make decisions that are deliberately damaging to the UK. What was it this week? An Albanian convicted gangster drug dealer couldn't be deported because it would upset his daughter. Well, I'm awfully sorry, pal. In fact, forgive me, I'm not sorry. As you get deported to Albania, you are very welcome to take your daughter with you. But of course, they don't. They let them stay. And once again, bit by bit by bit, Britain degrades. Britain gets eroded, and the whole place just gets worse.
I mean, honestly, Peter, I feel like I'm living in a parallel universe. I was born in 1974, grew up in the 80s, and the United Kingdom, isn't it incredible what we had? In the 80s, we were a global economic, military and diplomatic powerhouse. Mrs. Thatcher, as Prime Minister, stood shoulder to shoulder with Ronald Reagan, and they were equals. And we ended the Cold War. We saw the fall of the Iron Curtain thanks to the leadership of Reagan and Thatcher. We won the Falklands War. We had 5.3% economic growth in the late 80s. It was a truly golden era, and Britain was a successful multi-ethnic society. This isn't about skin colour, is it? What's happened is we've lost what Britain is.
Well, first of all, Mr. Dolan, I would like to chastise you for showing off by saying that you were born in the 1970s. That's particularly hurtful to an old bloke like me.
Oh, but yeah, listen, I've got you down as born in maybe the mid-60s when the Beatles were in the charts.
Enough, thank you very much. Now, of course, the Berlin Wall came down.
She loves you.
And why did it come down? Because everybody living east of it, certainly in what was then East Germany, knew that the might of the alliance between Britain and America and our other allies was simply unbeatable. We stood united. We stood firm. We knew as a nation what we stood for: might, fairness, and a rule of law. But of course, during the 70s and beforehand, we had immigration. People of different coloured skin were welcomed into this country, and there had been a lot of racism. But my generation in particular, we had the error of our ways pointed out to us. And those brown and black-skinned people became our mates.
Correct.
We went to football. We go to the pub together. We drink together. We boxed together. They became our mates, black athletes, black television personalities, entertainers, became people we looked up to. They became role models, and we ditched our sad, pathetic, racist ways. Our generation did that by and large. But what has happened since? We did not sign up to mass, uncontrolled, illegal immigration. We did not sign up to refugees welcome posters, taking the knee and having our culture and our nation dismantled step by step by left-wing, step by step. We did not sign up to that. What we have currently got, nobody has subscribed to that I know, and that is why people are so very, very angry.
Europe is over. Europe is dying. Peter, it's a great privilege to have you on the show always, especially in the context of you working so hard with your appearances on Talk and then, of course, your live show. What's happening with that voice? You sound a bit like Joe Cocker this morning.
Well, I have a 4-week break from touring now, but we're back at the end of August. I've got more than 60 shows to do in September, October and November. But for now, I'm going to have a break from touring. So my voice might be especially croaky because after the show last night, we may have just gone out to celebrate the fact that we have a 4-week break.
Well, listen, I'm glad that you had a rap party last night. You may be losing your voice, but you will never be silenced. Peter, you're my hero. We'll catch up soon. Thank you, boss. We'll speak soon.
You.
Peter Blexley there, former, of course, ex-top Metropolitan Police detective, dropping a few truth bombs. I think you'll agree. Well, speaking of that, in a world exclusive for Talk Breakfast, after the break, we're going to be joined by a Spanish politician and activist to tell us exactly what's happening on the ground. What she's got to say will shock you and devastate you. That's next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's get reaction to what's happening in Spain in the company of a good friend of Talk Breakfast, Spanish politician and activist Virginia Martinez. Good morning, Virginia.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, and it's brilliant to have you on the show. And Virginia, you said this would happen. You've been talking about this issue for years, about Spain's open borders.
That is the case. What we are seeing in Ceuta is, again, absolutely shocking. It's such a frustration because, as you say, we've been saying this for many, many years. Open borders policy, the only thing that do is create a pull effect where everyone comes into the country. And what we're seeing now is an Islamist invasion on our southern territories of Ceuta and Melilla. And this has been orchestrated by the Moroccan government in collusion with our weak socialist government. We have, as I mentioned, no borders. It is estimated that between 50,000 to 80,000 African immigrants have crossed from Morocco into Spain in a flow that sometimes has reached 1,200 invaders per hour. The images that we're seeing are like scenes from a horror movie. It reminds us, Mark, I don't know if you remember, if you've watched World War Z, where the zombies were climbing up over the walls. It was just like that. They were just climbing over the walls. They were coming underneath the fence. They were coming from the sea. It was a complete disaster. Ceuta is being destroyed. Bear in mind, the population of Ceuta is 80,000 people. That is almost the amount of invaders that have come in just a few days. Ceuta has been ransacked, businesses have had to close, citizens are confined and locked in their homes or have abandoned the city in panic. Immigrants are looting and breaking into houses. It's a complete disaster. We're suffering a coordinated attack on our borders of Ceuta and Melilla that should have required action using all state resources. But instead, what does our government do? Absolutely nothing, no reaction. They took several days to take the military in. And once the military and the police was in, they said, do not intervene. There are images of our national police assisting the invaders in reaching the shores, and the Red Cross has provided them with water and medical attention. It was almost like a humanitarian mission, not a control our borders, there is an invasion. You can see images from how illegal immigrants are coming in, celebrating full of confidence because they know they're not going to be sent back. This is a problem, not just for Spain. I have to remember this. This is a problem for the whole of Europe. We are being blackmailed by third world countries because they feel they have impunity. This is not the first time that Morocco has pushed tens of thousands of fighting-age men into our country. There is normally a foreign political event that triggers it. In 2021, 15,000 men flooded into Spain, pushed by the Moroccan government as punishment because we hosted the Polisario leader in the occupied Sahara, which is considered a rebel in Morocco. And a week ago, Pedro Sanchez brokered a gas deal with Algeria, Morocco's #1 enemy. And the response has been to send 80,000 fighting-age men into our territory. Morocco is definitely a hostile country towards Spain and Europe, and we should terminate all agreements, all direct aid, and we should implement sanctions against them because they collaborate with human trafficking rings to destabilize Europe. And this is causing serious public safety issues because they release criminals from their jails and push them into Europe. But the problem...
Yeah, go on. The problem is?
I was just going to finish with this, Mark. The problem is that there is no unity in Europe. Our politicians have left us down. We have no real international allies either. So we are on our own here, Mark. I feel we are on our own.
And the European Union as an organisation, just doesn't take this seriously. It's very relaxed about illegal immigration. The political will is not there to stop this. You have, it seems, Virginia, a huge gap between where the public are and where the elites are, and this doesn't end well.
It cannot end well. When the people are telling you we want closed borders, and the politicians following, I don't know what agenda, but there must be an agenda, because this is not just one country, two countries, or three countries. This is all over the world, all over the Western world, where politicians have united, especially on the left, to open borders without listening to what the people have to say. And we've said this many times in previous occasions where we've met in this fantastic talkTV show, that when that happens, we could create a conflict in between the people and the government that could result in civil unrest. Let's leave it there.
Well, I think that is a very real risk. And the reason why is because, Virginia, people will start to think that voting doesn't work.
Exactly. And it doesn't work. And you've touched a sensitive subject here in Spain, because, as you know, Pedro Sanchez is in a very, very weak position. And because he's so hated by the public, he is creating a new pool of voters. He's such a control freak. He cannot release power, that because the Spanish people hate him, he's creating new voters. He's going to regularize 1.3 million illegals. And I'm sure there will be nationalizations coming from those 1.3 million. But in parallel, he is granting citizenship to over 2.5 million people in South America with the grandchildren law. And this is all to change the next national election, which is coming next year.
Well, if you put those two figures together, so 1.3 million illegals plus the 2.5 million South Americans absorbed into the country, that's almost 3 million. That's around 5 or 6% of the entire Spanish population overnight.
Exactly. And you're not counting the family reunifications. You could multiply that figure by 3 or 4, because they could ask for the families to come into the country, and they could be granted, especially in South America with this grandchildren law, family members, immediate family members could get a passport as easily as that, just by saying they're a family of one that has a passport already. So you can multiply that figure. And you have to put that into perspective, because we have already absorbed 4 million immigrants, 4 million immigrants in the last 4 years. Can you imagine what the strain that this is all putting in our welfare system, in our infrastructure, in the health system, in the education system? It is unbearable. It is unbearable. And it all comes back to our weak politicians. Pedro Sanchez is in a minority government. Pedro Sanchez is surrounded by scandals. So because he is in such a weak position, he is pushing for these regularization processes that are creating a pull effect, calling all immigrants from Africa and Europe into Spain. And this is why we're seeing the images that you have been seeing these past few days in Ceuta, because there is a pull effect. There is a call for all illegal immigrants to come into Spain, because they see that we have open borders. And not just that, we're going to grant them legalization. We're going to give them benefits. We're going to give them a house. We're going to put them in front of a Spanish person that has been contributing for the system for a number of years. That open borders policy is as absurd as creating laws where when they come by boat, you cannot send them back. This is the kind of laws that we're getting into our country. He is, as I mentioned, in a very weak position, Mark. We have to remember that he is surrounded by corruption scandals in his party, in his family, in his government. I don't know if you remember, but his political godfather, Zapatero, has been indicted for influence peddling and money laundering and smuggling. He had a number of jewels in the safe in his office. His wife has been charged with embezzlement and influence peddling. and has her passport removed. Her younger brother had been convicted for administrative misconduct. His right-hand man, Avalos, has been handed a 24-year sentence for taking bribes in public contracts during COVID. His attorney general was forced to step down after being found guilty of revealing confidential information. His own party created a network of people in his inner circle to control judges, journalists, and witnesses through extortion and blackmail to try to influence the court and the police action. There are over 126 individuals under formal investigation surrounded Pedro Sanchez. As I mentioned, he is in a very weak position. He is in a minority government surrounded by enemies of Spain. He is supported by the Catalan separatists, Basque separatists, Basque terrorists, communists. He's in such a weak position and they are asking so much for him and he's willing to give them anything. He has also, as I mentioned at the beginning, alienated us from our natural allies. He has sided with Iran against the US. He has sided with Hamas against Israel. We are on our own. We have no European allies, no international allies, a weak government, an open borders policy. So what we're seeing at the moment is Finland, Sweden, Italy calling for Spain to be excluded for the Schengen area due to the current invasion in crisis. Pedro Sanchez is a threat to our democracy, is a threat to our safety, and a traitor to our country.
But the problem is, it's not just Pedro Sanchez, it's the political establishment in Spain, in France, in Germany, in the United Kingdom. And we look at Ceuta, okay, and Ceuta is an extreme example, but in many ways, Virginia, we have a mini Ceuta every day across Europe. So, for example, in the United Kingdom, on Wednesday, 750 illegals arrived on our shores. The vast majority of those men will remain.
I know. And what can you do against a government that does not listen to the people? What we're seeing is massive demonstrations, is sometimes even people getting too angry to the point that they start burning these hotels where migrants are staying. And it's just the rage and the frustration that honest people have in the ground, where they're paying their taxes, they're being good citizens, they're taking their children to school, they have a national identity that they feel they're losing. They're putting at the end in the queue for any benefits in whatever way, and they are left to pay the bill for having an invasion, and especially an Islamist invasion of a culture that is so different to the ones that we have in Europe, that is completely diluting our national identities. And why is this happening, Mark? I mean, how can we explain this?
Well, it's so hard to understand, but I think it's a culture of anti-Westernism which has infiltrated the establishment in this country, in Spain, in France and elsewhere. A ruling elite that hate the West and hate everything we stand for. That's why they're anti-Israel. That's why we talk about slavery reparations. That's why we have the failed socialist multicultural experiment which has no expectation of integration. In fact, integration is discouraged because to ask people to integrate into Spanish culture or British culture or French culture is racist. That seems to be the problem. And just briefly, Virginia, this is not about skin colour, because certainly 15, 20 years ago, Spain was a successful multi-ethnic society just like the UK. So it's not a race question. It's predominantly culture, isn't it, and national identity.
It is predominantly national identity and culture, and it doesn't matter the color of the skin of the person. When you look at some of the cities in Europe and you look at the degradation, at the filth, at the violence, you're not looking at color. You're just looking at the filth, at people dressed, like women especially in Islamic costumes, where you can see how that is a submissive culture of the woman for a man. And this is not what we have been brought up with. These are not our values and our principles.
It's not Spain. It is not Spain. The word Spanish should mean something.
Exactly, exactly. Being British, being Spanish, being Italian is much more than a passport, or is much more than a regularization process. It is a feeling of belonging to one or some of the greatest countries in the world, with a profound cultural identity that has been built through history. And it represents our way of life, our values, and our principles. And we should be fighting for that, because we are at the brink of losing who we are just for these open borders.
It's shocking. I mean, Spain is one of the most successful countries in human history. So it's got a remarkable story, and of course dominated large chunks of the globe historically. Spain is a sophisticated, elite-level civilization, and it's so shocking. I mean, I took a call earlier from a lady called Joan in Sunderland, and she said, Virginia, Spain is dying, which is a devastating sentence. I fear that you agree. Before I let you go, what's heartbreaking about this is that you didn't really choose this path, did you? You didn't think it would fall upon your shoulders to try to save your own country, but here we are.
Here we are. And I think it's our role in history. At the end of the day, if we don't fight, who will? It's values, it's history that we have to protect for the next generations. We were given, our grandparents, our great-grandparents gave us a fantastic country, and it's our turn to fight for that.
Virginia, we really appreciate you joining us, because your story and the story of Spain is our story too. So please stay in touch with us, and we can't wait to have you back on the show. We love Spain, and this is an amazing country that must be saved. It's a warning to the world. When are we going to wake up? My thanks to Virginia Martinez, who is a Spanish politician and activist. I think you'll agree what an articulate, incredible person she is. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast 8:49.
$49,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Greater Manchester has a new mayor. Let's get a reaction. It's a Labour mayor, so the man that's celebrating is Paul Richards, former Labour advisor. Paul, great to see you again. How are you, sir?
I am indeed celebrating, but it was a very, very long night waiting for the results. There's a lot of bleary eyes this morning.
It's been a good week for the new Prime Minister, hasn't it?
Well, I think the result in Greater Manchester, which a few weeks ago people were seriously contemplating the prospect of a reform win in Greater Manchester, and indeed that's the reason why he was blocked, Andy Burnham, from standing as the Labour candidate for fear of that, has been blown out of the water, and everything has changed in the last month. And it is the arrival of Andy Burnham that seems to have done that. And interestingly, also bad news for the Greens too, because all of the wards in the constituency that the Greens won in the by-election, for parliamentary by-election a few weeks ago, went Labour. So the Green candidate there, or the MP there, is on borrowed time too. So low turnout, but good result.
Most definitely. Is low turnout a worry? Because your boss, effectively, the Prime Minister, the leader of the Labour Party, wants to devolve more powers locally. Is that a good idea when those local populations aren't electing these people?
Well, it's a 25% turnout, which is low. And I don't go down the route of compulsory voting, which some people have suggested. I think that basically means you've lost the argument. And it makes it like paying taxes rather than something that should be a positive celebration of democracy. But I think we all need to just work a bit harder at getting turnout up. I think votes for 16 to 18-year-olds will help with that, because it gets people into the habit at an early age of voting, and sort of demystifies what goes on in those church halls and school halls on a Thursday in a ballot going on. And I just think that that's the sort of thing that we need to inculcate at an early age. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of devolution. I mean, I think at last we've got a Labour government with a animating purpose, getting power out of SW1 into the hands of the people, putting communities in control, including with tax raising powers. I think is something that can re-energise energy. And the lesson of democracy in our country is that if people don't think it's going to make any difference, it's all pointless, and someone else somewhere else has all the power, and then that's when you get low turnouts. If you feel it's going to make an actual impact over your neighbourhood, your community, the chances are turnout goes up. So I think there is a sort of double-edged thing here. With the more devolution you do, the more democracy you get, a higher turnout you'll see.
Well, there is an argument for that, but what I'm concerned about, Paul, is I don't know whether devolution is going to tackle youth unemployment, which is the highest in the whole of Europe. I don't see how devolution is going to tackle the highest energy costs in the developed world. I don't see how devolution is going to tackle low growth, low productivity, inflation. I don't see how devolution is going to stop the boats. It feels to me very performative, feels like political theatre.
Well, I disagree with that up to a point, although, of course, there's still a role for central government doing those big things that you've described. But certainly on economic growth, Manchester has shown, Manchesterism under Andy Burnham has shown that with a devolved assembly and a mayor actually representing local people, you can get economic growth. You can do the deals with the businesses, you can attract the investment in, and you can get stuff out of London and the South East and into a major conurbation like Manchester. So actually that can drive economic growth. I mean, the vision I think that Andy Burnham has is a bit like the Victorians, where these great centres in the cities and the surrounds, where these engines of growth doing different things in different parts of the country, particularly different manufacturing types, but you can get it all going on in why not in Newcastle and Dundee and Belfast and everywhere else? Why does everything have to be sucked into London and the southeast? And that's just a very unbalanced economy. So I think the devolution isn't just a political fix, it's actually about growth and spreading the wealth around the country too. And then again, elected mayors can do more with apprenticeships. Manchester has shown that you can get this new qualification, which breaks down the divide between academic and vocational training. So he's going to roll that out across the whole country and finally end that ridiculous snobbishness around apprenticeships and people that didn't go to university. So that's a good thing. But on the big national questions, of course, it's still the government's job. This week, Andy Burnham was announcing our new nuclear programme and building more nuclear submarines in Barrow and making sure we're a very firm part of NATO. So, that's something that an elected mayor can't do. So, yeah, power needs to be devolved, but it doesn't mean central government just gives up and goes home.
Now, Paul, I will grant you that Andy Burnham is a lot better at politics than Keir Starmer. You can feel the difference immediately within the country. There's actually less doom and gloom. This is a human being that speaks human. But what I'm worried about is the detail, because if you've got the new Prime Minister who talks about the cavalry is coming for the pub industry, well, the numbers don't really imply cavalry. They imply a limp donkey. So pubs will possibly save £1,000 a year thanks to this cut in business rates. They need £1,000 a day, not £1,000 a year. And then this breathing room with our electricity bills amounts to 45 quid in a year. As Jacob Rees-Mogg would say, that is thin gruel.
Well, I think they're all symbols of intent. I don't think that's the end of the story in each of those cases, but it was a very early doors attempt by Andy Burnham in the first hours as Prime Minister to show that he's on the side of people worried about the bills and the retail and the hospitality industry in particular. And these are symbolic acts. And, the opposite would have been, I suppose, to do nothing or to put the bills up. Which you'd have been decrying as well, Mark. But the fact is he's tried to put them down in these early stages. But that was a sign of his priorities, and I think that's reasonable. So, I'd be a bit reluctant to be cynical about it because I think it's a sign that things can go in the right direction.
I mean, £1,000 a year for pubs, you couldn't really call that cavalry, could you?
Well, I think, like I say, it's the start. That's not
so
the
it's
end.
not cavalry.
It's
what
the
is
start.
it? It's a rather aged...
Well, you can enjoy your
sort of pony. What's the ponies? The Shire ponies.
You can enjoy your rather stretched metaphors if you like, but I think it's a sign that actually the government gets the pain that the industry is feeling, and that
Yeah, but it's on the surface. It's performative. It's trivial. We're talking trivial. 45 quid a year for my viewers and listeners is trivial.
Well, I don't think it's trivial, but I don't think it's the answer to everything either. It's a good start.
Okay.
But, if you get more people into work, for example, the apprenticeships, things like that, that means people have money to spend in the pubs and the shops, and that's another way to do it.
Paul, I always love seeing you. A great pleasure to have you on the show. Let's catch up soon. A good week for Burnham, I'll give you that. Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. More to come. Dolan's Dispatch next.
Secretary has brought forward a very rigorous plan in relation to this, and let's remember, of course, the numbers can fluctuate, but overall boat crossings are down quite significantly year on year, so that does suggest that the plan is working.
We've just witnessed drone footage of the French authorities handing out life jackets to illegal immigrants and then waving them goodbye as they head on their way towards the UK. So the French are actively helping and facilitating illegal immigration. In addition to that, the French forces did nothing to stop that huge migrant dinghy. In fact, the dinghy came out, then it went back to the beach to pick up even more illegal immigrants and then departed for a second time. During all of that, the French did nothing, and they even handed out life jackets and waved goodbye as these illegal immigrants head towards the UK. I think that's terrible. I mean that anyone who did cross the channel and arrive in Dover could be immediately deported within around about a week.
Wait about a second, he's just dragging a line by the look of it.
Is that a warning shot towards us? I don't know.
Well, I was trying to work out.
Okay. The French officers could clearly see we were conducting an interview on the back of the fishing boat. They sailed extremely close to us and started firing gunshots, 11 live rounds. We could see the bullets hitting the water behind our boat. They weren't firing before their approach. They weren't firing afterwards. There was no notification of any kind of training exercise. So it did seem to me to be an effort to intimidate us.
The thing that I find, and I should say alarm clock Brits find so frustrating, Chris, and this is why I wanted you on this morning. Yesterday, finally, the unelected Messiah of Manchester stood up and said to consummate fury from most of us that Labour's plan to stop dinghy migrants is working. This, Chris, despite the fact that 1,000 illegal migrants have still come into this country in the last 9 days since he became Prime Minister.
Je suis un député dans le Parlement du Royaume-Uni. Why have you allowed the migrants into the water? Why haven't you stopped them?
Our order is to let them go like that.
Your order is to let them go?
We just have to say to them, don't do that, it's dangerous.
So your orders are not to intervene?
We have to.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
2 minutes past 9, top of the morning. Where have you been? Happy Saturday, one and all. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you for a big hour to come. Dolan's dispatch on the way. Might get me cancelled. Good. I hope it does. Cancel me. Of course, I can't be cancelled on the home of common sense, where we have a mission statement. We have robust, strong management. We don't buckle under pressure. My goodness, I've dropped a few truth bombs from this very studio over the years. My colleagues here, including executive producer Ted Jeffrey, have always had my back. We do have a big hour to come. Parish notices, by the way. I am in for the brilliant Ian Collins all of this week. 1 till 4, Monday through Friday this week. So do join me. Breaking this morning, Europe in meltdown as Italy closed their border to Spain following the wild invasion of 60,000 Moroccans in the last 48 hours. Is this the beginning of the end of the EU? And what happened to Europe, this once great continent? Why has it abandoned its riches, its culture, its civilization with open borders? And is Spain a warning to the West? What does this crisis mean for the UK? And is Brexit starting to look like a rather good idea? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leaves a voice note. A big hour to come. Let's talk. And we'll kick off, as always, at this time every Friday, Saturday and Sunday with Dolan's Dispatch. What the hell happened to Europe? Once the cradle of Western civilization, a continent that gave the world Shakespeare, Mozart and Einstein, French cuisine, Spanish art, Italian design and German engineering. Europe, which it's easy to forget still includes the United Kingdom, became one of the richest, most prosperous and influential civilizations in human history. And now look at it. What happened to Europe? What went wrong? What have they done? Tens of thousands of undocumented migrants arriving in a matter of hours, doubling the population of a small Spanish enclave overnight. Europe, this once great continent, has been asleep at the wheel, and it's been a slow decline for decades. Whilst America and China have pursued industrial, economic and military dominance, Europe has dined out on past glories, prioritising ruinous projects like net zero and allowing manufacturing to drift to the Far East. Meanwhile, governments across the continent have sold their populations a comforting lie that the state can always take care of you and that nations don't really need to live within their means. So the result has been decades of high taxes, low growth, stagnant productivity and endless borrowing. Donald Trump doesn't get everything right, of course not. But he was laughed at in 2018 for warning Germany about its dependence on Russian oil and gas. And then Putin invades Ukraine. They laughed at Trump then. They're not laughing at him now. And Trump has been incredibly consistent on illegal immigration into Europe. For years now, he's argued that European leaders should stop illegal immigration, control their borders, protect their national identity and preserve social cohesion. 3 years ago, he said, look, if you don't control immigration, you're not going to have a Europe anymore. And folks, that is where we are heading. This is existential. It is Europe's political class, including our own, by the way, because it's Germany, it's France, it's Italy, it's the United Kingdom as well. The governing class, the lanyard-wearing, metropolitan, university-educated elite, the woke who govern us that have presided over decades of economic stagnation, uncontrolled immigration and strategic decline. We don't even have a military, and Donald Trump gets told off and castigated for telling Europe, maybe have some tanks. Donald Trump gets castigated for saying maybe have a few military aircraft. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Maybe buy a couple of drones. Maybe defend your borders. Maybe protect your culture, your history, and your population. So Europe's leaders have allowed this continent, this once great continent that controlled the world, to sink into irrelevance. 20 years ago, the economies of the European Union and the United States were roughly the same. Let that sink in. 20 years ago, the European economy was as big as America's. Well, in 2026, the US economy is now double the size of the EU. And that's not an accident. Because yes, you have to fight, work hard, and have a vision to build a successful country. But folks, you have to fight, work hard, and have a vision to keep it. Look at the state of Europe today. Spain, France, Italy, Ireland, and yes, the United Kingdom. These countries, right, most of them, including the UK, have a successful multi-ethnic society. We've had that for decades. But what we've got since then is open borders and the failed socialist model of multiculturalism. Very different from a successful multi-ethnic society. That's a good thing. Multiculturalism is a left-wing socialist concept that requires no integration. In fact, it says don't integrate because that is racist. And this failed experiment has left European societies more divided, less cohesive, and in many cases, less safe. And this latest shocking set of scenes from Spain is literally the latest symbol of a continent in decline. So across Europe, you've got ageing populations, bloated public sectors, anemic economic growth, endless debt, and a political class increasingly disconnected from their own people. It's become normal now to see armed police at Christmas markets, concrete barriers protecting pedestrianised streets, and security around national monuments. Why? Because there are people from alien cultures with hateful ideologies that detest everything about the West, that hate Italy, that hate Spain, that hate Ireland, that hate the United Kingdom. Now, I'm a British man of Irish parentage. I'm the son of immigrants, and I've got family connections in Germany. My love for Europe is unlimited. I think we all love Europe, don't we? The EU, not so much, but we all love Europe. I don't know anyone that doesn't love Europe, which is precisely why watching this slow decline is so quietly devastating. The economic stagnation, the exhausted political consensus, the uncontrolled immigration, the loss of confidence, the sense that Europe no longer believes in itself, it all smells of death and decay. And this is what happens when successful nations begin to hate themselves, when they apologise for their history, when they forget the achievements that made them prosperous, when they gradually surrender the social, cultural and economic inheritance that previous generations worked so hard to build. Europe, as we know it, is dying before our very eyes. Not because its people chose decline, but because too many of those entrusted to lead it lost the confidence to defend what made Europe exceptional in the first place. What Europe has, its history, its culture, its freedoms, its achievements, is precious. But folks, it is slipping through our fingers. And when it's gone, it's gone. 0344 499 1000. I love Europe, and it's dying. I'm telling you. If those scenes in this enclave, which I still haven't got the hang of pronouncing, I wrote it down, let me do it properly, Ceuta, there you go. Ceuta. I'll be working on that all afternoon. Those scenes reflect a system on the brink. Chris is in Epsom. Good morning, Chris. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Morning, Mark. It's been a few weeks since we've spoken.
I've missed you. What happened? You never write? I mean, did I say something?
No, I will tell you all about Poland, where I've been after we've spoken about Spain.
Great. Have I gone over the top with that dispatch? Am I exaggerating a bit?
No, not at all. Neil brought you up to date on the figures of 1.2 million being given Spanish citizenship in Barcelona by giving their fingerprint and eye scan. And I was very pleased. So I phoned earlier, actually, a couple of hours earlier. Virginia Martinez brought you up to date with the 2.5 million that he's given Spanish citizenship in South America with a secret government department that hunted down Spanish people that had Spanish families that had fled Spain during the Franco Civil War and offered them Spanish citizenship again just by filling out a form. So he's already propped his vote up by over 4 million because he's polling at about 6%, Sanchez is. Now, the real problem I find with this, Mark, is that Fabian Picardo, who is the governor of Gibraltar, folded his Socialist Party into Sanchez's party.
Brilliant.
Then Starmer handed Spain border control of Gibraltar. Then he steps back, and let's be fair, Andy Burnham, that had been planned for at least a year. We know that he signed the leases on the offices for number 10 North and all the rest of it. This has been planned, and the reason it's been planned is that Starmer didn't want to be in power and have his dirty hands on what's been done to Gibraltar. And now, because Ceuta has all been planned, they are all going to head for Gibraltar. This has been pushed by... This is a grey war. The invasion from the Middle East and North Africa is being pushed by the Wagner Group, by Putin, by China. It's all being assisted. And our politicians, get it right, Mark, it's not that they don't have the balls to do it. They don't want to do it because they don't believe in borders. They believe in this multicultural, nobody assimilate, nobody integrate. They want that. What they want is this new dystopian communist outcome that we're heading for. If we don't make a change now, we don't force our politicians to do our bidding, which is what they're supposed to do.
Chris, I've only got a couple of seconds. I don't want to get in trouble with Ted Jeffrey, who's a master in the angry stare. But quickly before you go, can Europe be saved? Can Britain be saved?
I'm not sure it can. I for 6 years wore the uniform, and I'm a proud Englishman. Beginning of last month, I went into business with a Polish man, and I've just come back from having 8 days in Poland. What a difference. People on a Sunday out with their families and their dogs, enjoying the weather, not a care in the world. Not one single balaclava-covered bike-riding phone thief in sight. Just a very, very happy population who are safe in what they are doing with a growing economy.
Do groups of predatory men go up to the women in Poland and harass them?
There aren't any there. They've got secure borders, Mark. On the borders.
What about mobile phones? Do they get snatched out of your hand when you're checking your messages at the bus stop?
Let me tell you, I was staying in a hotel in a busy city. I was sat outside at a table. We just celebrated signing the deal between myself and the Polish gentleman I've gone into business with.
Congratulations.
And we got rather smashed. And he went off home, and I stayed outside to have another cigarette. And I then went in the hotel, and in the morning I woke up, and I was thinking, where's my phone? Oh, Jesus, I've left it on the table outside. And I went down to the hotel reception with all the grief and consternation that aggravation was going to cause me and having my phone taken. And the reception said, "Oh, Mr. Chris, you left your phone and your things on the table last night." And this is a table that's being passed by people on the street as well.
Chris, you're living your best life, and that was a brilliant call with great intel from Poland. Call me again soon. It's been far too long. The show is not the same without you. The numbers go down and we lose the truth bombs. So stay in touch with us and we will catch up soon. Chris, thank you for that. I wish we had longer. I've got a full switchboard. So what we're going to do, we're going to get to your calls at 9:30 and we're going to power through them at a rate of knots. Two things we're going to discuss. Is anyone convinced by Andy Burnham's plans for the country? This devolution thing, is that going to improve your life in any way, shape or form? And Europe, is it over? Is Europe done? Can Britain be saved? 9:18 Talk Breakfast.
$49,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Live in the studio, the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, Kate Ferguson. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning.
Brilliant to see you, a new Prime Minister. The news never stops. Can I get a line from you on Spain and what's happened? This will be a big concern to my viewers and listeners, as a full switchboard demonstrates. And your readers at The Sun are concerned about this too, aren't they? Because if they see open borders on the continent, they think, well, this is going to eventually come here.
Yeah, I don't think you can underestimate the shocking scenes that we've seen. I think it's 60,000 over a border in a day. Now, that is the back door into Europe. We have Gibraltar quite nearby, where there's fears that some of these people could end up there. And, you know, once they're in mainland Europe, as I suspect a lot of these people will eventually get to, do they just head straight to Calais and try to cross the border here? So do we end up seeing these same men trying to cross over into Dover in a month's time?
Well, definitely. I think your readers at The Sun are hard-working people. They're patriotic. It's a big cross-section of backgrounds. Mm-hmm. But they've all got one thing in common, which is they just want a country with, like, you know, border control, just law and order. These scenes are just, the public find it completely unacceptable.
Yeah, they are totally unacceptable. Everybody wants control of their borders, and law and order is so important. And you see here that you have these, as I say, 60,000 surge the border, arrive in dinghies, they've looted, they set fire to shops. And I thought what was so interesting about the detail of this is they've obviously launched this stampede across the border by seas, because there's a recent court ruling that has said that Spain can't arbitrarily turn people away if they arrive by water. And I just think that's a really interesting fact, because it shows that when you have these kind of legal rulings that set precedent, they have real-world implications. So they're often decided on in the ivory tower of a courtroom, but the real-world implication is now you've got 60,000 people in a Spanish territory who shouldn't be there because one judge or a couple of judges made a ruling.
Well, you're so right about that, and I had Simon Danchuk, ex-Labour MP, on the show earlier, and he said that that is something that politicians should be deciding, not judges. 100%. And it paints a picture, doesn't it, of a sort of governing elites who are very far away from where the public are. I mean, illegal immigration in the UK, this isn't even particularly left versus right, is it? I think last time I checked, around 70% of Labour voters are not happy with illegal immigration.
Yeah, it's not a left-right issue. Like, if you can't control your borders, don't be surprised when people go to a party that can. So it's not a left-right issue. Everyone wants border control. These Spaniards want border control as well. But yes, you know, these judicial rulings have real-world implications, and they incentivise different types of behaviour, and we're seeing that totally writ large in what's happened in Spain. So I do think that is a warning for all the world, really, all of Europe and the UK in particular.
Is it surprising that Andy Burnham has not been more vocal on illegal immigration since he came in, or is he still in the love-bombing stage for the Labour left?
I mean, it's not surprising. I suspect he won't want to kind of... he'll want to talk about illegal immigration as little as possible. Like, whether or not illegal immigration wants to talk about him is a different thing. He is in the love-bombing stage. He's in the love-bombing stage of... I think love-bombing the voters, actually. So that first week of announcements, the sugar rush of small but very politically astute, consumery policies to cut bills here and there where you can.
Help pubs out.
Help pubs out. It's that kind of a, we call it... the Tesco approach, every little helps. You know, they're not big ticket items, but they do create a sense that he's got your back. So I think he's been love-bombing the voters, but we're going to see trickier decisions lie ahead. So will this migrant crisis end up being the story of the summer for the UK as well? Because we're already seeing, obviously, a lot of boat crossings across the Channel into Dover. Also, coming out of the summer, we're heading into what we know will be a tricky budget. Departmental cuts to pay for what rise in defence spending they can find, and potentially tax rises ahead. So there's bigger, thornier, harder problems for PM. But I don't think anyone can say his first 2 weeks weren't a success. They certainly were.
Most definitely. Well, he's the PR PM, isn't he?
I've not heard that.
Because off the back of some quite trivial policies, in my view. So if we look at the breathing room for electricity bills, OK, I welcome it, but it amounts to £45 a year, which is not going to move the dial for too many folk, and probably will be swallowed up by inflation and an expected rise in 90 quid with your energy bill. So we're net minus 55 on that one. Then we've got the cavalry coming to save the pubs, because it's a national institution, apparently. Well, they'll be benefiting to the tune of £1,000 a year. I mean, some of these outlets need £1,000 a day. So he's managed to get great headlines from not too much by way of policy.
Yes, I mean, look, I think the total cost of the spend of those policies was something like 1.3 billion, something like that. It's not loads of money. I mean, in the grand scheme of what the country spends, it's very little money, but it does hit the right notes. You know, pubs, they are a national institution. Bills, that is a concern. And bus fares, again, something that people notice potentially every day if they're spending that money every day. So they're politically astute. I mean, what the PM has done here is, I think, try to learn from the mistakes of Keir Starmer. So, you know, I was sitting here 2 years ago with Keir Starmer PM, and in his first months as a Prime Minister, he did very little. He didn't do this trickle of announcements. So then straight away there was this sense that there was drift, a purposelessness. OK, you wanted to be PM, now what's it for? I think Andy Burnham is right to do the small ticket announcements he can now and say, this is my intent to tackle the long-term stuff. But look, it's on his terms so far. He's had a honeymoon period, and I think things will get a lot trickier, because when you're talking about things like I don't know, tackling the social care crisis. There's a big demand for something to be done in this country, but taxes are already at their highest since the Second World War, and people feel like that burden is too high. So if your answer is to just whack up taxes, then that's going to spark a backlash.
Most definitely. And fair play, he has definitely hit the ground running. Something almost Trumpian in the flurry of policies, this idea of first 100 days in office. Remember Donald with his executive orders, which he insisted could go on TV. And there's been a flavour of that from Andy Burnham. And there's a palpable mood in the country that we've got someone as a Prime Minister that, notwithstanding discussions about the policies, but he speaks human.
Yeah, yeah. I think both those things are true, actually. So there was a real sense in this country that just you couldn't get stuff done. Stuff just isn't happening, be that building new homes or building new infrastructure or being able to turn illegal migrants away at the border. Now, whether or not Andy Burnham is able to do that big stuff really remains to be seen. And if he isn't, his popularity will wane. But his whole performance in this first 2 weeks is designed to show voters he can get stuff done. He knows what he wants to do with the office, and he's busy, busy, busy. And that's the right strategy, the right tactical approach, even if some of the bigger questions are still unresolved.
Yes. Full disclosure, just my personal opinion, you could characterise Andy Burnham as a great salesman, the first PR PM. I think he's a con man, but we shall see. And my suggestion, the thing to back that up is A, it's a big announcement, you know, that cavalry save the pubs, a grand a year, do me a favour. You've also got the devolution plans. Now, to me, this is performative, it's political theatre. I don't see how that is going to improve people's lives to have more politicians. And I'm particularly concerned at the turnout of the local elections that we've seen, the election for the Mayor of Greater Manchester, 25% turnout. Now, he wants to devolve power at the exact moment that people are not voting in these local elections. That's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got a funny system in the UK. It's so piecemeal. So on the one hand, prime ministers talk about devolution, but, you know, one area has a mayor, then some other area has a mayor with different powers, then another area doesn't want a mayor. You know, Wales has different powers to Scotland, to London. So it's a real postcode lottery. What are we seeing? I think there's a few things that are interesting. Obviously, Andy Burnham, a big zealot for devolution because that's where really he made his name as Greater Manchester Mayor. But you're right, his successor, a less big name as a politician, you know, a council bureaucrat or long-term politician who's now got the job, not so exciting, not so charismatic, so only 1 in 4 bothering turnout. So, you know, is there the demand for it? But I think almost more interestingly than that is this row that's brewing over what devolution really is. So Andy Burnham talks about how he wants to devolve more, but it seems to be on his own terms. So he wants mayors to have more power over what they spend their cash on, but he wants them to spend the cash. When Ben Houchen and the Conservative Party mayors suggest we don't want to spend more cash, we would like to give tax back, a tax cut to our workers, our businesses, then they have a problem with it. So devolution is only real if you let the local area define what it wants to do with the money, I think.
Yes. I mean, look, I'm going to give Andy Burnham a chance, and if he does good things, I will say well done. And I think keeping Shabana Mahmood in the Home Office is an outstanding decision. Well done, Andy. So we will look for the positives, but I'm just concerned that a lot of this is PR-driven and the detail is not so substantial. A couple of quick ones before we let you go. Simon Danchuk thinks that Andy Burnham is rolling the pitch for a snap election in November. Now, you know as well as I do that his recent denial won't mean too much because he can always say circumstances have changed. What chance do you think of a November election? And if it were to happen, can Labour win it?
I think a November... I mean, I'm always nervous about, you know, putting it all on red or putting it all on black. I think a November election is unlikely. Why do I think it's unlikely? You know, a lot of people will be saying to Andy, you've got this bounce in the polls, you're quite liked, you should go now because you can remain Prime Minister, maybe even secure a small majority. and it will never be better for you. And that's true. But I think he might take one look at the past 10 years and see that even when prime ministers win outright majorities, even big ones, they often only really have a couple of years in power. So he might think, I'm going to bank my 3 years rather than roll the dice and hope to get 8. And his MPs will loathe it. They will absolutely loathe it. And Andy Burnham is a prime minister that, as you just alluded to, he needs to be liked, he needs to be loved. He's got a lot in common with Boris that way, really.
Yeah.
And he craves that love. And I think that having just been installed by Labour MPs, even if he's tempted to roll the dice, I think November's too early. Whether or not he could change his mind later is potential. But I just think his psychology works against it, even though a lot of his advisors will be urging him to go early.
I think it's fair to say that Reform have had a horrible month.
Yes.
So can they ride out this storm? If we're 2 or 3 years away from an election, is the 5 million quid and George Cottrell, Posh George, all the rest of it, is that going to be yesterday's news by the time of a general election? Can Nigel ride out this storm? Because I think it's the biggest crisis he's faced since he became leader.
I agree, and I think that the reason they're in such a crisis is not actually just those stories, it's their response to them. So Nigel Farage has always been a politician that's been happy to kind of take questions, defend his decisions and be quite front-footed. He's felt very thin-skinned the last month. He's dodged questions that in the past he would be quite open about. He's called a by-election in Clacton. No one understands why he's called that. It's meant that he, Reform's greatest asset, has been off the pitch while Andy Burnham's come in as a new PM. They've been off the pitch for the by-election in Greater Manchester, which I suspect also explains the poor turnout.
6 months ago, we thought they could win that.
Yeah, so it's not just that he's dogged by this question of the 5 million and Posh George, it's that actually their response to it has been so thin-skinned, so aggressive, that people have gone, I'm not sure, actually, maybe you're not up to the job. And I think it's that response they need to reshape. They need to get back to what they were promising people, which is, look, we will say it as it is, we'll restore control to the borders, we'll try and get the economy going. Have a positive image of what you want to do in government and sell it. Don't just accuse everyone of being in a plot to bring you down, because that wears a bit thin, and I think they've seen now that it has worn a bit thin.
Posh Kate, thank you. New nickname.
New nickname.
I think it sits well. My thanks to the brilliant Kate Ferguson, political editor at The Sun on Sunday. Really looking forward to tomorrow's paper. Thank you for coming in. As always, Kate, we'll catch up, all being well, in a week's time. This is Talk Breakfast. Your calls next, 9:35.
So the full list of candidates for the Clacton by-election: Joseph 77, the Independent; Adam Akatip, the Forward Party; Count Binface, the Count Binface Party; Nick the Incredible Flying Brick, the Official Monster Raving Loony Party; Tony Kane's an independent. Woke Trump Kazi is an independent. William Stewart James Clouston is the Social Democratic Party candidate. Rhys Cowan, an independent. Glenn Charles Cummings, an independent. Martin Davis, the Freedom Alliance Real People, Real Alternative. Andy Earlam's an independent. Nigel Farage, the Reform UK Party. Atiye Fards, an independent. Lawrence Fox for the Reclaim Party. Tony Francis is an independent. Robin Green, an independent. Abby Hookway, an independent. Howling Lord Hope, the Official Monster Raving Loony Party. Stephen Richard Ingram is an independent, as is Amy Morris. Derek Norbert Morris is an independent. Michael Noel O'Keefe, an independent. Martin O'Brien, an independent. Nick Pellis, an independent. And Ketanur Kumar Pipiaya is the UK Voice Safer and Stronger UK Party. Daniel Pocock's an independent. James Ransley, the Consensus Party candidate. Jerry Smith is an independent. Kai Stevens for the British Democrats. John Stevens for rejoin the EU. Baron von Thunderclap for the Official Monster Raving Loony Party. Pamela Walford is an independent. Marcus White, Everyone is God Party. And Mark Wilkinson for the Independents.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, folks, 9:38 Talk Breakfast. Holly Willoughby, ex-This Morning presenter, decided to relaunch her career on YouTube. Let's take a listen.
Is he going out of the bottle or is he going in a glass? And if it's a glass, where are the glasses? No, he wants a glass. I've got martini. Oh yeah, okay. I've got martini glasses. I've got champagne, and now he wants a beer. Yeah. Okay, what's in here? Opener. Okay. Exactly. What am I going to drink? I can't be like drinking electrolytes.
Why?
Yeah, I'll have a glass. I'll have a glass of wine.
Yes.
No. I can still smell sausages. I'm not joking, from last night.
From yesterday?
I keep getting wafts, so I just checked if the oven was on, because I was like, I've washed my hair. It's not.
Sausage roll on the counter. That might be.
Oh, that's why. See, I know my. I knew I could smell sausages.
OK, what a silly sausage. Can I apologise, because it's the breakfast show and some of you will have been sent back to sleep listening to that clip. Well, Holly Willoughby is definitely struggling. I will say the numbers on YouTube are non-existent, and the headline in the Daily Telegraph by way of review, 1 star, Holly Willoughby's dire YouTube show makes Meghan look good. Stephanie Tecci is a very old friend of mine and a brilliant entertainment journalist. Stephanie, great to see you again.
Hi, Mark. It's been too long.
Listen, I'd love you to be on YouTube with Stephanie Tecci live. You would break the internet because you're very entertaining. You're a bit naughty as well. Everything that this new show from Holly Willoughby is not.
Mark, you know what? Holly is back, but she is not back with a bang. You know, this is a very sink or swim moment for Holly Willoughby's career. And right now, she's sinking right now. You know, she's no longer the nation's TV sweetheart anymore. We've seen through that. We've seen the controversy over the past few years. We want a bit of realism from Holly. So she's now come back, gone into this Meghan, Martha Stewart kind of era. And so far, it's not working. You know, I think this is very much a last shot saloon for Holly Willoughby's career. But we have to give her the benefit of the doubt. It was the first episode, but if I'm honest, Mark, it was like watching paint dry. I fell asleep halfway through it because I was like, Holly, you're so much capable of giving us so much more. But I can sense there's a lot of nervous energy there.
Well, I think it demonstrates that these established stars and indeed the producers of establishment TV shows, they don't understand YouTube and the digital space, do they? Because I know how hard it is. I've got the Mark Dolan show on YouTube and it's a real battle every day to get those numbers. But this was inept, wasn't it? One guest, Stanley Tucci, for an hour, low energy, the format all over the place. I mean, I don't understand how these TV people could do such a bad job.
Well, the problem is, Mark, Holly's very exposed. As you said, when you come to YouTube now, you're in the wild, wild west of broadcasting. And I think, you know, Holly's been very much sheltered for all of her career in the confines of ITV studios and the other gigs that she's done. She's very much a teleprompter kind of presenter, and that's how she won audiences. But now, Holly, we're seeing the real Holly, and she hasn't got Phil anymore. She's not on This Morning. So here's brand Holly, and at the moment she's going to have to work really hard to get viewers to like her again and to be interested. It's not switching the TV, it's actually having to log on to something and watch her for 50 minutes.
Well, yeah, I mean, in many ways, this is people power, isn't it? With these big stars go on YouTube and the public are like, thanks, but no thanks. I mean, even Ant and Dec, who I admire, they're brilliant broadcasters and they're really nice guys. But I'm just looking at the numbers for their most recent videos on YouTube. 180 views, 1,000 views, 525 views. I mean, these two, right, they're the biggest stars on TV, but they can't get more than a few hundred people to watch them.
Well, Mark, if we're real, with TV, sometimes we're forced to watch the likes of Ant and Dec and Holly, because they're a part of these big brands where we're like, okay, we want to get the entertainment. But on YouTube now, people are way more selective. People are way more critical, and they can't have, obviously I wish Holly the best and Ant and Dec the best. But can you have that longevity in your career without the ITV? I think it's very questionable.
And the problem is that these regular shows like This Morning on ITV are losing audience share as well. The public just want something a bit more real, don't they, Stephanie?
They do. It's that time. The tide is changing now. There's so much content out there, and I think it's very hard to now be this kind of new, fresh, entertaining presenter when the public knows all the controversy that surrounded you over the past few years. But you know what? Well done to Holly. She knows that it's time for a change. So maybe it could be the start of something great for her. It's only the first episode. I've spoken to people, like sources who work closely with her, and she's just as nervous about what the public think about this. So I think she's really going to give it her all.
Yeah, and I wish her well. She's actually had a really awful few years, hasn't she? Particularly with the case of a stalker that was plotting to kidnap and murder her. So this poor woman, on a personal note, has been to hell and back. Plus, she had a whole Philip Schofield scandal as well, which was a scandal not of her making.
But you know what, Mark, what I really wanted to see in that first episode was her actually addressing some of these things. I've had a bad few years. Phil's gone. I had this stalker. This is what people want to see. We want to see the real Holly. And I think the problem with her, she's too manufactured sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think, as the episodes go, I hope she just stops talking about sausage rolls and just give us the realness. But, she has had a tough few years. So I'm hoping that this could be the making of something better for Holly Willoughby.
Well, definitely. She's a nice lady. And I would say that anyone deserves, to have the best of luck on YouTube. The Mark Dolan show's on YouTube. I launched it a year ago. Not an easy thing to do. Doing great numbers, I'm pleased to say, but every show is a miracle when people watch it, and you're only as good as your last video. It's the Wild West, basically, isn't it? What she needs, Stephanie, I think, in my humble opinion, is a co-host.
Yes, she does.
That would inject, I think, a bit of energy, because then she's not carrying the whole thing. And I don't know who she could grab, but, I mean, what about Philip Schofield? He's around.
I was just about to say that. Maybe there could be a plot twist. We've seen Phil get back onto Channel 5, and there's been talks about him trying to get his way back into TV. So maybe she needs to do an episode with her and Phil, and they just air it out. That will do well for numbers. So she needs to be thinking out of the box. But maybe, Mark, maybe you need to tell Holly how it's done and join her for an episode.
Oh, well, listen, I'll tell you who I would watch. I would watch Stephanie and Holly. Because what we love about you, Stephanie, you drop the truth bombs. You don't take prisoners, do you?
You can't. Not in this entertainment game right now, Mark.
No
I think,
way.
The days of entertainment being fluffy and, just nice is no longer that. We're seeing the talent for who they really are these days. So you have to drop those truth bombs.
You do. And just briefly, everything is moving online now, isn't it? And in 10, 15 years' time, we will be watching our stuff on YouTube and streaming. And you're not going to have your BBC One and your Channel 4. That's all going to be gone, isn't it?
Well, what's happening is we're finding all the big boys, as we like to call them, they're actually watching YouTube now to see how people are doing their shows on there. So it's all been flipped on its head. And I think these broadcasters just remain big by name, but whether they're still winning audiences' hearts, that's another question to be answered.
Stephanie, keep dropping those truth bombs. Wonderful to see you again. Very old friend of mine, Stephanie Tecci. What a fantastic broadcaster she is. I would watch Stephanie Tecci every day on YouTube. I promise you, right, it would be the naughtiest show, because Stephanie is very, very naughty, and it's why I love having her on. Right, lots more to come. 9:47. Next up, Virgin Radio star Steve Denyer. Don't go anywhere.
49,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Chris Evans is the legendary host of the Virgin Radio Breakfast Show. Occasionally I get to, make eye contact with him in the lift, and it's always a highlight. However, Chris Evans looking over his shoulder because his stand-in for 2 weeks is Steve Denyer. And Steve,
hello.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you, I'm really enjoying it. One more week left. The big man is back a week on Monday, so I'm here next
I don't think he's needed. I'll speak to him.
Stop it. You've been told about staring at him.
No, Chris can go to Boom Radio, all right, which is perfect for a gentleman of a certain vintage.
Prestige.
Yeah, I'm giving you... I know it's going to seem a little... I'm giving you Virgin Radio Breakfast.
There we are. Thank you.
Listen, no, really enjoyed it. I've actually caught you in snippets and it's been very entertaining. Listen, this is very exciting because we always choose a year and you're not allowed to say the year.
No, and I'm not.
So
I will not. Listen, Mark, something massive happened. We're going to get to this in a moment. In the world of music, something happened this day, this very day, August the 1st, back in this year, that changed everything.
Wow.
If you think about the decade and everything. But first of all, I want to talk about this story. It's probably the biggest international story. This is Ronald Reagan and the assassination attempt. It happened at the same hotel where the recent press night, you know, the Trump assassination.
Was it the Hilton in D.C.?
This is it. Take a little look at this. Stunning stuff, shocking stuff.
Well, it was shocking, and luckily the assassin or whatever was not successful.
Yeah, 4 people were struck. I think the press secretary was disabled.
Terrible.
Reagan, unbelievably, didn't realise he'd been shot until he was back in the limousine, and the limousine sped off. And he couldn't breathe properly. And they were like, sir, we need to look at you. And they rushed him. And apparently when he got to the hospital, he said to the surgeons, I hope you guys are Republicans.
That's a great line.
Sense of humour,
He
isn't
was
it?
a hilarious man. And the other thing about him, he was very quick-witted. So around a year later, because he got back to work almost straight away.
Yeah, almost
You can
instantly.
imagine how traumatic it would be to be shot at, and PTSD. So a year later, he's back working, and he's making a speech in a hall, and a balloon exploded. It popped, and it sounded like gunfire.
Yeah.
And you get the pop, and in 1 second, on a beat, he said, missed me. I mean, how quick is that?
Yeah, it's incredible. And a mark of the man as well. He had to get back on his feet. But when we see so many different events like this happening in the last couple of years, it's important to remind ourselves it's always been happening in America. Like, it's a very, very dangerous place. And this was a mark of this year. The biggest television event with 750 million people watching this worldwide was this. Take a look at this.
Prince and Princess of Wales. And she steps forward on his arm, as they will do now through life. And if there's any heart that hasn't been won over by her today, it can kindly surrender now. A curtsy to the Queen before she leaves. Out into the open air and into the world and the world's cheers.
you can imagine people all over the country now saying, I want to copy that dress.
And the Queen, Mrs. Shamkin too, Lord Spencer, Lord Mayor of London, Duke of Edinburgh, all waving goodbye.
Just wonderful, Charles and Diana.
What could go wrong?
Who knew? I have vague memories of watching it, and this is, I think, the moment where the royals became celebrities.
Exactly that. I was just about to say, it was iconic, wasn't it? It was the look. It was the fact. Even now, when I see St Paul's, I think immediately of Diana, you know, on the steps. But it was such an iconic location, and the wedding. There was all the hype about the wedding dress, which was huge. There was something like 30 wedding cakes. She got his name wrong. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
She said Philip Charles instead of Charles Philip. It started badly.
It definitely did. There was also that interview before they got married when they were engaged, and the interviewer said, do you love each other? And Charles said, yes, well, whatever love is. Not a good idea.
No, days before.
Your betrothed doesn't want to hear that.
It's
Whatever love is, you see.
Yes, that's a very good impression.
Like it.
They did a great episode in The Crown. I love The Crown. Have you watched The Crown on Netflix? And there's, I think,
full of
season
lies,
4.
but very entertaining.
Yeah, but it's so good. It's like Dynasty, isn't it? The Dynasty version. So this happened massive. I mean, 750 million people. They reckon most people took the day off to watch it on television. It's one of those big, big moments at the beginning of this decade, and I still haven't given away the year. Let me take you back to January the 2nd of this year. This was the day that the Yorkshire Ripper was arrested. This had been rumbling on. 13 murders, 7 attempted murders, 1,000 police officers looking for this man, and this happened.
Terrifying.
West Yorkshire Police then held an extraordinary press conference so they could tell the world.
He is being questioned in relation to the Yorkshire Ripper murders. It is anticipated that he will appear before the court in Dewsbury tomorrow.
Can you tell us whether he has a Geordie accent?
I cannot tell you that because I've not heard him speak.
I mean, it was such a chilling set of crimes, and this was before CCTV and DNA. It was actually hard to catch serial killers back in the day.
It really was, really was. It took 5 years, and he was pulled over because of a dodgy number plate.
There you go.
And that was it. It was a random, like, you know, can you step outside your car, sir? And they thought, they saw stuff in the boot, and they just thought, oh, we're going to take him in for questioning. And then the whole thing unravelled. There's a great Netflix documentary about the process and the build-up to this moment. But this happened on January the 2nd of this year, right at the start of the year, after 5 years, and a huge hunt as well. Should we talk music?
Let's do it.
One final thing. So the reason I picked this is because on this very day, August the 1st, back in this year, this happened. It was the launch of MTV.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We've gone for main engine start. We have main engine start.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll.
Well, incredible. This was music television, which became one of the biggest franchises.
Yes. Launched in this year in America, launched in '87 in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll was the opening line. What was the first video? Do you know this? This is a great kind of pub thing.
Was it Thriller?
No, it was Video Killed the Radio Star.
Oh, ironic.
The Buggles, which is great, wasn't it? They reckon when MTV launched, there was only about 200 videos in circulation. Record companies weren't attuned to making videos, so then everyone started thinking about image, and then you had, like, you know, George Michael and your Madonnas and your Michael Jacksons, and all those big names were really launched, and obviously Dire Straits wrote a song with MTV in it, didn't they?
Yes, that's right.
And it changed everything. We didn't get it to 1987, but it launched this day in 1981.
81, I thought it was 82, so there you go. You had me guessing right till the end. And if I think of some of the great iconic videos over time, you mentioned some of them. I Want to Break Free with Queen in drag, vacuuming the house.
Like the Coronation Street stuff.